Have you ever felt that modern life keeps tightening its grip on you? You wake up with a racing mind, check your phone before your eyes fully adjust to the light, and already the weight of responsibilities presses on your chest. Work deadlines, bills stacked on the table, a relationship that feels fragile, a body that carries tension no matter how much you try to rest. For so many people, this endless rush creates a silent despair, a quiet voice inside whispering, "Is this all there is?" The truth is, millions are living in this constant storm, and yet very few ever find a lasting way out. Stress is no longer just a passing moment. It has become the background music of daily existence. Anxiety is not a rare condition. It has become the silent companion of countless households. We chase success, we chase money, we chase validation, and still, we lie awake at night wondering why we feel empty. This is the pain of the modern world, and it is deeper than most of us dare to admit. But imagine for a moment that the struggles you face are not punishments. They are not signs of personal failure. They are signals, they are invitations. Hidden within every challenge lies a path toward freedom, a door waiting to be opened. For thousands of years, the teachings of the Buddha have whispered this truth. Suffering is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Every burden you carry can be transformed into wisdom. Every heartbreak can open you to compassion. Every restless night can lead you to awakening. The world has taught us to seek answers in external victories, yet the most powerful transformation begins within. And this is where our journey begins together. This program is not about religion in the narrow sense. It is not about dogma or ritual. It is about practical wisdom, offered in simple words to meet the very real problems of modern life. You will hear stories, reflections, and practices that anyone can follow, no matter your background. You will see how timeless truths from the East can light up the darkest corners of a Western home. The goal is not to escape life, but to meet it with clarity, strength, and a new sense of freedom. Over the coming hours, we will travel through 10 deep valleys of human struggle, stress, money, relationships, anxiety, and more, and we will uncover the hidden paths that lead out of each one. These are not abstract theories. They are living practices that can ease your mind, soften your heart, and remind you that you are not alone. What makes this journey powerful is the combination of honesty and hope. Honesty, because we will not look away from the pain that shapes our lives. Hope, because we will discover that even the heaviest chains can be broken. As you listen, let the words touch you not just as information, but as an invitation to feel, to breathe, to pause, and to see your own life with fresh eyes. Each lesson will build upon the last, like stepping stones across a river. You may stumble, you may resist, but with each step you will feel the current carrying you closer to peace. So take a deep breath. Allow yourself to arrive fully in this moment. What you are about to experience is not just a teaching, but a transformation. The door to freedom is here. The key is already in your hands. Together, we will unlock it. There is a quiet enemy moving through modern life, and its name is stress. At first, it hides in small corners. The slight tightening of your shoulders as you read an email, the shallow breath you take while rushing through traffic, the restless stirring at night when your mind will not settle. But slowly, stress grows into something larger, something that colors every part of existence. It is no longer just a temporary reaction. It becomes the constant atmosphere, a fog that makes even bright days feel heavy. Many people wake up tired, spend the day running from one task to the next, and collapse into bed without ever feeling alive. And yet the cycle repeats. This is the silent disease of our age, and it steals not only our peace, but also our health, our joy, and our ability to love. The modern world praises busyness. People wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, as if being overworked is proof of worth. "I am so busy" has become the answer we give when asked how we are doing. And behind those words hides a painful truth. We no longer know how to rest. The body is wired for survival, but not for this endless flood of emails, notifications, deadlines, and expectations. Our ancestors once worried about storms, harvests, or wild animals. Today, we worry about mortgages, job security, social approval, and the constant demand to do more, be more, achieve more. This pressure builds like a storm inside, and the results are visible everywhere. Migraines, high blood pressure, insomnia, panic attacks. Marriage is falling apart under the weight of unspoken exhaustion. Parents snapping at their children because their minds are stretched too thin. Stress is not only a private problem, it is a social crisis, tearing at the very fabric of our communities. Beneath the statistics and medical reports lies something even more personal. Think of a moment when stress ruled your life. Maybe you sat in traffic, late for an important meeting, with your chest pounding as you rehearsed excuses in your mind. Maybe you lay awake at 2 a.m, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations and worrying about what tomorrow might bring. Or perhaps you have felt the sharp edge of burnout, where even small tasks feel impossible, and the joy you once felt for your work or your relationships has been replaced by numbness. Stress does not just live in the mind, it lives in the body. It is the shallow breath, the clenched jaw, the knot in your stomach that never seems to untangle. It is the invisible weight that makes the world feel too heavy to carry. Why do we live this way? Part of the reason is habit. We grow up in a culture that glorifies achievement. From school to career, we are told that our value lies in our ability to produce, to climb higher, to stay ahead. We absorb the message that rest is laziness, that stillness is wasted time, and that unless we are moving forward, we are falling behind. This belief creates a constant background of anxiety, like a voice whispering, "You are not enough. Do more." Another part of the reason is fear. We fear failure, rejection, and loss. We fear being left behind by a world that never stops moving. And so we push ourselves harder, sacrificing health, relationships, and inner peace in the name of survival. Yet the harder we push, the more the cycle tightens around us. Here is the truth that few dare to say. Stress is not just about what happens to us. It is about how we relate to what happens. Two people can face the same situation: a missed deadline, a financial setback, a difficult conversation, and respond in entirely different ways. One may spiral into panic, while the other breathes, pauses, and responds with clarity. The difference is not the event itself, but the mind that meets it. And this is where the wisdom of the Buddha shines like a lantern in the darkness. For over 2,000 years, these teachings have offered a way to see clearly, to step out of the storm, and to find peace even in the middle of chaos. At the heart of this wisdom is one simple yet powerful practice: mindfulness. Mindfulness is often misunderstood. Some think it is about escaping reality, about sitting in silence with closed eyes while the world burns around you. But mindfulness is not escape. It is presence. It is the ability to bring full attention to this moment, exactly as it is, without judgment. It is noticing the breath as it flows in and out. It is feeling the ground beneath your feet. It is hearing the sound of a loved one's voice without drifting into distraction. Mindfulness is the art of returning home to yourself, over and over, in the middle of whatever life brings. It is a practice that does not require incense, robes, or temples. It requires only a willingness to pause, to breathe, and to notice. Imagine this: you are sitting at your desk, overwhelmed by work. Papers are stacked high, emails keep arriving, and your mind races with all that must be done. In that moment, mindfulness invites you to stop. Take one breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the tension in your shoulders. Recognize the whirlwind of thoughts, and instead of fighting them, simply observe them. For just a few seconds, you step out of the storm. And in that space, a shift happens. You remember that you are not the stress itself. You are the awareness that sees it. This small shift can change everything. The problems may remain, but your relationship to them transforms. Instead of drowning, you begin to swim. Science now confirms what ancient teachers have always known. Mindfulness reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. It lowers blood pressure, improves sleep, and enhances emotional regulation. But beyond the physical benefits, it gives us something even more valuable: freedom. Freedom from the prison of reactivity. Freedom from the endless cycle of rushing and regretting. Freedom to choose our response instead of being driven by fear and habit. In this freedom, life begins to open again. The simple act of drinking a cup of tea becomes a moment of peace. Walking through the park becomes a meditation. Holding your child becomes a sacred encounter. Stress loses its grip, not because the world changes, but because you have changed. The Buddha once compared the mind to a restless monkey, leaping from branch to branch, never at rest. Today, that monkey is caffeinated and scrolling on a phone. Mindfulness is the way we gently train the monkey to sit, to breathe, to rest in the present moment. At first, it resists. The mind will wander, argue, and pull you back into worry. But with patience, with kindness, the mind learns to settle. And as it settles, clarity arises. You begin to see that much of your suffering was not caused by events themselves, but by the stories you told about them. You begin to notice that the racing thoughts lose their power when you simply watch them come and go. You begin to feel a spaciousness within, like a clear sky appearing after a storm. This is the gift of mindfulness, not the end of challenges, but the beginning of peace within them. Stress may be the disease of our time, but mindfulness is the medicine. Not a pill, not a quick fix, but a practice, a way of living. It reminds us that life is not found in the next email, the next paycheck, or the next success. Life is here, now, in the breath you are taking, in the moment unfolding before your eyes. And when you return to this truth, even for a few seconds, the weight begins to lift. You discover that peace is not somewhere in the future. It is available right here, in this very heartbeat dot. Yet even with this knowledge, many find it difficult to bring mindfulness into their lives. The pace of modern society feels too demanding, and the mind argues, I don't have time to sit. Still, I don't have time to breathe. But this is precisely why mindfulness matters most. It is not about adding another task to an already crowded schedule. It is about changing the quality of the time you already have. You can practice mindfulness while driving, while washing dishes, while walking down the street. It does not require extra hours. It requires only attention, a willingness to be where you are, instead of constantly running toward where you think you should be. Consider the story of a man named Daniel. He was a successful executive, admired by his colleagues, earning more than he had ever dreamed. But inside, he was unraveling. Sleepless nights, chest pain, constant irritability. His body was breaking under the weight of stress. His doctor warned him that his heart was in danger, but Daniel brushed it aside. He told himself, I'll slow down after this project, after this promotion, after I make enough to feel safe. But that moment never came. Finally, one morning, he collapsed in his office. The wake-up call was brutal. As he recovered, a friend introduced him to mindfulness. At first, Daniel resisted. This is too simple. Breathing won't fix my problems. But slowly, as he practiced 10 minutes a day, something changed. He began to see his thoughts for what they were, just thoughts, not absolute truths. He noticed the beauty in small moments, his daughter's laughter, the warmth of the sun on his face, the comfort of silence. Stress did not vanish, but it no longer controlled him. He learned to live again. His story is not unique. Around the world, people are rediscovering peace, not by changing everything outside, but by awakening to the power of presence inside. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment was about suffering. He said that life contains stress, pain, dissatisfaction. No one escapes this truth. But he also said there is a way out. The way is not to deny stress or to pretend it doesn't exist. The way is to meet it with wisdom and compassion. When you practice mindfulness, you begin to see stress not as an enemy, but as a teacher. It points to where you are clinging, where you are resisting life as it is. Every time you feel the tightness in your chest, every time your mind spins in worry, it is an invitation. Return to the breath. Return to the present. Return home. This is how the cycle begins to break. Still, the practice is not always easy. The mind is stubborn. It resists quiet. It seeks distraction. It prefers to stay busy because busyness numbs the deeper feelings we are afraid to face. Many people discover, when they first sit in silence, that anxiety, sadness, or anger rushes forward. This is normal. It is the mind's way of releasing what has been buried. The practice is not to push these feelings away, but to hold them gently, as a mother holds a crying child. In this compassion, healing begins. Slowly, the storms quiet. Slowly, the body relaxes. Slowly, the heart remembers peace. Science offers a powerful mirror here. Studies on meditation show that the brain itself changes with practice. The amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers stress reactions, becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for clarity and decision-making, becomes stronger. It is as if mindfulness rewires the nervous system to respond with wisdom instead of panic. This is not magic. It is training. Just as muscles grow with exercise, the mind grows with practice. And just as exercise requires consistency, mindfulness requires patience. But the rewards are extraordinary. A life no longer ruled by fear, but guided by awareness. Think of stress as fire. Uncontrolled, it burns, destroys, and consumes everything in its path. But when harnessed with skill, fire cooks food, warms homes, and gives light. Stress is not the enemy. It is energy. It becomes destructive when left unmanaged, but with awareness, it can become a source of transformation. The Buddha taught that even our greatest difficulties can become the path of awakening. When stress arises, instead of reacting with anger or despair, we can pause, breathe, and ask, what is this teaching me? Where am I clinging? What can I release? In this way, stress itself becomes the fuel for liberation. Let us practice together, even now, in a simple way. Wherever you are, pause, notice your breath. Feel the air moving in through your nose, filling your chest, then leaving again. Notice the weight of your body on the chair, the ground beneath your feet. Let your shoulders drop. Allow the tension in your jaw to soften. You don't need to change anything. Just notice. For a few seconds, let the world be as it is, without resistance. This is mindfulness. Simple, ordinary, yet powerful enough to transform your life. If you return to this practice throughout the day, even for a minute at a time, you will discover a growing sense of peace. Stress will still appear, but it will not dominate. You will learn to ride the waves instead of being drowned by them. And here lies the deeper wisdom. Mindfulness does not only help with stress in the present moment, it plants seeds for the future. Each time you pause, breathe, and respond with awareness, you strengthen the habit of peace. Over time, this becomes your natural way of being. You stop reacting from fear and begin responding from clarity. You stop rushing through life and begin living it. And when challenges come, and they will, you meet them with steadiness, not panic. This is freedom. The journey of stress and mindfulness opens the door to a larger truth. Life itself is full of pressures, uncertainties, and losses. Stress is only one face of suffering. Beyond it lie struggles with money, relationships, health, and meaning. Each of these brings its own pain, its own questions, its own path of healing. And yet, the teachings of the Buddha offer a light for each one. What begins with stress leads us deeper into the heart of life's challenges. It shows us that suffering, while unavoidable, is not meaningless. It is the very soil in which wisdom grows. As we step forward, let us carry this lesson with us. Mindfulness is not a luxury, it is survival. It is the anchor in the storm, the medicine for the restless mind, the first step on the path to freedom. And now, with this foundation, we turn to another source of modern suffering, one that weighs heavily on countless lives: the struggle with money. Money. Few words in the modern world carry such power. With money, we can provide food, shelter, comfort, and opportunity. Without it, life feels uncertain, even dangerous. For many, money is not just paper or numbers on a screen. It is safety. It is status. It is the measure of worth. And yet, behind closed doors, countless people lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how they will make ends meet. Bills arrive like waves crashing on the shore. Credit cards whisper promises, but trap us in chains of debt. Even those who appear wealthy often confess, in quiet moments, that they feel trapped by their own success, afraid of losing what they have gained. Money may solve some problems, but it creates new ones, weaving anxiety deep into the fabric of modern life. The pain of money is not always about lack. Sometimes it is about endless hunger. A person may earn enough to live comfortably, but still feel restless, chasing more and more. A bigger house, a newer car, a promotion that demands longer hours. The promise of happiness always lies just beyond the next paycheck, but when it arrives, the satisfaction quickly fades. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. We run faster, but we never arrive. In America, this cycle is deeply rooted in culture. From childhood, we are told that success means more and more wealth, more possessions, more proof that we are doing better than the neighbor next door. Result is a society filled with material abundance, but emotional poverty, where people have full closets and empty hearts. Think of the young couple, Sarah and Mark. Both worked long hours, climbing the ladder in their careers. They earned enough to buy a house in the suburbs, to fill it with furniture, to drive respectable cars. From the outside, they looked successful. But inside their home, tension grew. Mark worried constantly about the mortgage, about college savings for their children, about retirement funds. Sarah compared their lifestyle to friends on social media, pushing for vacations they couldn't afford and renovations they didn't truly need. Conversations turned into arguments. Nights turned into silence. Slowly, love became overshadowed by financial fear. They had chased security, but what they found was stress. Their story is not unusual. Across the world, households echo with the sound of financial anxiety. Why is money so powerful? Because it is tied to survival. Deep in our biology, we equate resources with safety. Without money, we fear hunger, homelessness, rejection. But modern culture has magnified this fear into obsession. We have built systems where self-worth is measured in dollars, where success is displayed in possessions, and where failure is judged by the inability to keep up. The result is that even the wealthy feel poor, and even those with enough feel insecure. It is a cycle of endless craving, and like any craving, it can never be fully satisfied. The Buddha named this craving as one of the deepest roots of suffering. He saw how desire, when left unchecked, leads to restlessness, jealousy, greed, and despair. He taught that the problem is not money itself, but our relationship to it. Here lies the opening of the door: sufficiency. In Buddhist teaching, there is a radical idea called contentment. It does not mean giving up ambition or refusing to improve your life. It means learning to recognize when enough is enough. It means seeing that true wealth is not measured by what you own, but by what you can enjoy. A person with little, who knows how to appreciate each meal, each sunrise, each act of kindness, may live in abundance. A person with millions, who never feels satisfied, may live in poverty. Contentment breaks the cycle of craving by teaching us to rest in the present moment, grateful for what is already here. But contentment does not mean passivity. It does not mean ignoring bills or pretending money does not matter. The Buddha also taught wisdom and right livelihood. To live wisely with money means to earn it in ways that do not harm others, to spend it with mindfulness, and to use it in service of values that bring true happiness. Think of generosity. When we give, not from excess but from the heart, we discover that money can become a tool for freedom rather than chains of fear. Generosity softens greed, heals relationships, and builds community. It reminds us that money has no value when hoarded, but great value when shared. A small act of generosity, buying a meal for a hungry neighbor, supporting a cause you believe in, can bring more joy than the purchase of another gadget collecting dust on a shelf. Science confirms this ancient truth. Studies show that people who spend money on experiences, on connection, or on helping others report greater happiness than those who spend only on material goods. The joy of a new object fades quickly, but the memory of a meaningful moment or the gratitude of a person you have helped lasts much longer. In this way, generosity becomes a spiritual practice, transforming money from a source of anxiety into a source of joy. It teaches us that abundance is not about having everything, but about knowing that we already have enough to share. And yet, fear still rises. What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if the economy crashes? These fears are real. The Buddha never denied the difficulties of life. Instead, he taught us to face them with wisdom rather than panic. We prepare wisely, saving when we can, living within our means, building stability where possible. But beyond that, we learn to let go of the illusion of control. No amount of money can guarantee safety. Life is impermanent. Markets rise and fall. Health comes and goes. Relationships shift. The only true security is inner security, the confidence that, whatever happens, you have the resilience to meet it with clarity and compassion. This kind of wealth cannot be stolen by thieves, destroyed by fire, or lost in a bank collapse. It lives within. Imagine holding a cup of water. If you grip it too tightly, the water spills. If you hold it too loosely, it falls. But if you hold it with balance, it stays steady. Money is like this. Too much attachment leads to greed and fear. Too little care leads to recklessness and loss. But with balance, with mindfulness, you can hold money in your life without letting it control your heart. You can use it as a tool, not an idol. You can see it as a means, not an end. And when you live this way, money loses its power to define you. You become free. The practice is simple, though not easy. Each time you feel anxiety about money, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what do I truly need in this moment? Not tomorrow, not next year, but now. Often the answer is less than you think. Each time you feel the urge to compare your life to others, pause, breathe. Remember that comparison steals joy, and that what you see on the surface rarely reflects the full truth of someone else's life. And each time you have the chance to give even a little pause, breathe, notice the joy that arises when you share. These small acts of mindfulness change your relationship with money. Slowly, the chains loosen. Slowly, you begin to live with sufficiency instead of scarcity. As Sarah and Mark discovered, the turning point came not from earning more, but from learning to live differently. They began practicing gratitude at dinner, naming 3 things each night they were thankful for. They committed to spending less on things and more on experiences with their children. They set aside time each week to volunteer together, rediscovering joy in giving. The arguments did not vanish overnight, but something shifted. Instead of being trapped by fear, they began to feel connected again. Instead of money being a wall between them, it became a bridge. This is the power of changing not the numbers in your bank account, but the story in your mind. Money will always be a part of life. It will always bring challenges, but it does not need to bring despair. When guided by mindfulness, sufficiency, and generosity, money becomes an ally instead of an enemy. It becomes a way to care for yourself, your loved ones, and the world without losing your peace. It reminds you that wealth is not only what you hold in your hand, but what you carry in your heart. And as we explore deeper, we will see that the struggle with money is closely tied to another source of modern suffering: relationships. Because behind every financial argument, every struggle to keep up, lies the question of how we love, how we connect, and how we navigate the bonds that shape our lives. Money has the power to unite or divide, to heal or to wound. For many families, it is the unspoken tension beneath the surface, shaping conversations, decisions, and even love itself. Studies reveal that financial conflict is one of the leading causes of divorce, and even in relationships that survive, money worries often create silent walls between partners. Parents feel guilt when they cannot provide what they believe their children deserve. Children feel pressure to meet the unspoken expectations of their parents' sacrifices. Friends compare lifestyles, silently measuring their worth against one another. In this way, money does not simply affect our bank accounts. It reaches deep into the heart, shaping identity, love, and belonging. Asterisk, but here is the paradox. Money itself is neutral. It has no inherent morality, no agenda. It is only a tool, shaped by the hand that uses it. One person uses money to exploit. Another uses it to uplift. One person clings, another releases. The Buddha never declared money to be evil. Instead, he warned of attachment, of greed, of the way desire binds the heart. In the scriptures, there are stories of wealthy kings who lived wisely, using their riches to serve others, and stories of beggars trapped in endless craving. The lesson is clear. Wealth is not about the size of the treasury, but about the freedom of the heart. Let us return to Daniel, the executive who discovered mindfulness after his collapse. Once he began healing, he faced another challenge: how to live with money differently. He had built his entire identity on salary and success. Letting go felt like losing himself. But as he practiced mindfulness, he discovered a new way. He began to see his wealth not as a fortress, but as a river. A river has value because it flows. When dammed, it stagnates. When shared, it nourishes fields, villages, and life itself. Daniel began to give quietly, not for recognition, but for joy. He funded scholarships for students, supported shelters for the homeless, and helped neighbors without fanfare. To his surprise, each act of giving lifted his own heart. He found that generosity brought a joy deeper than any bonus check. His money did not shrink. His fear did. In giving, he received freedom. This freedom grows when we redefine what it means to be rich. The Buddha once said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." In a world that glorifies accumulation, this teaching feels radical. Yet consider the endless race of consumerism. New gadgets, new clothes, new cars all spark excitement for a moment, but soon the glow fades. The cycle begins again. It is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Contentment breaks this cycle. It shifts the question from how much more can I get to how can I live fully with what I have. It invites us to slow down, to savor, to recognize abundance in the ordinary. A meal shared with loved ones, a sunrise painted across the sky, a moment of laughter. These become treasures beyond price. This does not mean ignoring real financial challenges. Poverty is real. Inequality is real. Bills must be paid. Children must be fed. The Buddha never dismissed these realities. Instead, he offered practical guidance, right livelihood, to seek work that does not cause harm, to avoid exploitation, to live honestly. This principle invites us to align our income with our values, so that the way we earn supports not only survival, but integrity. For some, this may mean choosing careers that serve others, rather than simply chasing profit. For others, it may mean practicing fairness in business, refusing to cut corners at the expense of human dignity. Right livelihood reminds us that money is not only about what we gain, but about who we become in the process of gaining it. When we view money through this lens, even financial struggles can become teachers. Debt, for example, teaches patience and discipline. Unemployment, while painful, can awaken creativity and resilience. Economic downturns remind us of impermanence, the truth that nothing stays fixed forever. These experiences are not punishments. They are part of life's curriculum, shaping strength and compassion. Many who have endured hardship later say they discovered priorities they never would have found otherwise. They learned to value relationships over possessions, health over status, meaning over money. In this way, financial suffering can strip away illusions and reveal what truly matters. There is also a hidden spiritual danger in wealth, the illusion of control. When accounts are full, it is easy to believe we are safe, untouchable. But life is fragile. Fortune shifts. Illness arrives. Markets collapse. History is filled with empires that rose in glory and crumbled in dust. The Buddha's reminder of impermanence cuts through this illusion. All things change. When we cling to wealth as our only refuge, we build our house on sand. But when we cultivate inner wealth, mindfulness, compassion, wisdom, we build on rock. These treasures cannot be stolen. They endure through every storm. Let us pause here for a practice. Think of your relationship with money. Bring to mind a recent moment of financial stress. Perhaps a bill, a debt, or an argument. Feel the tension in your body as you recall it. Now, breathe. Imagine the worry as a knot. With each breath, soften the knot. Say to yourself gently, "This too will pass. I have faced storms before. I will face this one with wisdom." Now bring to mind something money has given you recently. A meal, a moment of comfort, an opportunity. Feel gratitude. Finally, imagine using money to bring joy to another person. Picture their smile. Notice how your own heart feels lighter. This is the shift. From fear to gratitude, from clinging to generosity, from scarcity to sufficiency. As we practice, we begin to see money not as a master, but as a servant. It becomes a tool for building a life aligned with values, for supporting love, for easing suffering. It becomes part of the flow of life, not the prison of anxiety. And in this freedom, we discover something profound. The deepest wealth is found in connection. The meals we share, the hands we hold, the lives we touch, these are riches no market can measure. Which brings us to the next valley of human struggle: relationships. Because beyond money, beyond possessions, the true measure of a life lies in how we love, how we connect, and how we walk together through the storms of existence. Human beings are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, we reach for touch, for comfort, for the warmth of another heartbeat. Relationships form the very fabric of our lives. Family, friends, partners, colleagues, neighbors. When they thrive, they give us strength, joy, and meaning. When they falter, they can cause some of the deepest wounds we ever carry. Few things bring more happiness than love, and few things bring more pain than the loss, betrayal, or conflict within that love. In this way, relationships are both our greatest blessing and our most challenging test. Consider the landscape of modern relationships. Couples marry with hope, yet divorce rates remain high. Families gather for holidays, yet beneath the smiles, many carry unspoken resentment. Friends stay connected through screens, yet feel more isolated than ever. We long for intimacy, but we fear vulnerability. We crave belonging, but we struggle with trust. In this paradox, relationships become a constant dance of closeness and distance, joy and sorrow, attachment and disappointment. The pain is real, and it touches almost everyone at some point in life. Imagine a woman named Emily. She loved deeply, but her marriage began to crumble under the pressure of unspoken expectations. Her husband worked long hours, believing he was providing for the family, while she longed for emotional presence, for time, for tenderness. They spoke less and argued more. She felt invisible, while he felt unappreciated. Eventually, silence filled their home, heavier than any words could be. Emily's story is not rare. Many relationships fracture not because of dramatic betrayals, but because of slow erosion, of unmet needs, of unspoken truths, of unhealed wounds. The pain lingers, not just in the heart, but in the body. Sleepless nights, tight chests, anxious thoughts. Relationships touch the deepest parts of who we are, and when they hurt, the suffering cuts to the core. Why do relationships cause so much pain? The Buddha offered a piercing answer: attachment. We cling to people, to roles, to expectations. We want others to fulfill our vision of happiness, to stay the same, to never change, to meet our needs perfectly. But life does not work that way. People change, circumstances shift, expectations collide. When reality does not match the image we hold, suffering arises. We may blame the other, saying, "You don't love me enough," or "You let me down." But beneath the blame is the deeper truth: our own clinging, our own inability to accept the impermanence of love in its many forms. Asterisk, this does not mean we should stop loving or detach coldly from others. The Buddha did not teach indifference. He taught freedom. He taught that true love is not rooted in possession, but in compassion. To love wisely is to care deeply while also recognizing that we cannot control another's heart. It is to offer kindness without demanding repayment. It is to support without suffocating. It is to walk alongside another, not as their owner or servant, but as a fellow traveler on the path of life. This kind of love does not eliminate pain, but it transforms it. Instead of bitterness, we find understanding. Instead of resentment, we find forgiveness. Instead of fear, we find trust in the unfolding of life. One of the Buddha's most famous teachings on love is the concept of metta, often translated as loving kindness. It is the practice of wishing well-being, happiness, and peace for ourselves and others without condition. Imagine holding your child in your arms, wishing for their happiness. That warmth, that tenderness, that hope, that is metta. Now imagine extending that same wish to a friend, to a stranger, even to someone who has hurt you. It may feel impossible at first, but with practice, it opens the heart in powerful ways. Loving kindness meditation softens anger, heals resentment, and builds bridges where walls once stood. It reminds us that beneath all the conflict and misunderstanding, every person longs for the same thing: to be safe, to be loved, to be free from suffering. Relationships also teach us patience. No one is perfect. Misunderstandings will arise. Words will be spoken in haste. Promises will be broken. To love is to navigate these storms with courage. Sometimes it means speaking the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it means listening more than speaking, setting aside our own need to be right in order to understand the heart of another. Sometimes it means letting go not of love itself, but of the expectation that love must look a certain way. In this flexibility, relationships gain resilience. They no longer break under pressure. They bend, they adapt, they endure. Think of John and Maria, a couple who once fought daily. Each blamed the other for their unhappiness. But through therapy and mindfulness practice, they began to shift. Instead of saying, "You never listen," John began to say, "I feel unseen when I speak." Instead of saying, "You don't care about me," Maria began to say, "I feel lonely when you come home late." By speaking from their own feelings instead of accusations, they opened a door. They began to see each other not as enemies, but as humans with wounds and needs. Slowly, the argument softened. Slowly, intimacy returned. Their story shows that when relationships are guided by awareness and compassion, healing is possible. Yet, not all relationships can be saved. Sometimes the most compassionate act is to let go. Holding on to a toxic bond out of fear or obligation only deepens suffering. The Buddha taught the importance of discernment, knowing when to stay, when to work, and when to release. Letting go is not failure. It is an act of love for yourself, and sometimes even for the other. It says, "I honor what we shared, but I will not sacrifice my peace or yours by clinging to what no longer serves." In this letting go, space opens for new connections, new growth, new freedom. At the heart of all this lies mindfulness. Just as mindfulness eases stress and reshapes our relationship with money, it transforms how we love. When we bring presence to relationships, we truly listen. We notice the tone of voice, the look in the eyes, the subtle signals that often go unseen. We respond not with automatic patterns, but with clarity. Mindfulness helps us pause before anger erupts, breathe before words wound, and choose kindness even in conflict. It invites us to see the humanity in the other, to recognize that they too are struggling, that they too are imperfect, that they too long for happiness. In this recognition, empathy grows. And with empathy, love deepens. So many of our relationship struggles come not from malice, but from misunderstanding. We expect others to read our minds. We assume they know our needs. We project our fears onto them. Mindfulness cuts through this fog. It reminds us to speak clearly, to listen deeply, to check our assumptions. It reminds us that relationships are not about winning or losing, but about growing together. And sometimes, growing together means holding hands. Sometimes it means walking separate paths. Either way, the lesson is love. As we reflect, let us practice loving kindness now. Close your eyes. Bring to mind someone you love dearly. Imagine them smiling. Silently say, "May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease." Feel the warmth in your heart. Now bring to mind yourself. Offer the same words. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. Finally, bring to mind someone you find difficult. Perhaps a colleague, a family member, or even an ex-partner. Offer them the same wish. Notice the resistance, the difficulty. yet still repeat, "May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease." This practice is not about condoning harm. It is about freeing yourself from hatred, opening space for compassion. It is about remembering that every being, even the difficult ones, longs for the same freedom you seek. Relationships are the mirror of our inner life. They reflect our wounds, our fears, our hopes, our capacity for love. To heal relationships, we must also heal ourselves. To offer compassion outward, we must cultivate compassion inward. This is the path the Buddha pointed to, the path of love. Without clinging, of connection, without chains, of compassion, without conditions. And as we walk this path, we discover that the quality of our relationships is not determined only by others, but by the clarity, patience, and kindness we bring to them. Love can be one of the most beautiful experiences in life, yet it can also become a source of endless anxiety. When we love deeply, we fear losing that love. When we open our hearts, we expose them to the risk of rejection. This paradox lies at the heart of many relationships. The very thing that gives us joy can also become the cause of our greatest suffering. To understand this tension, we must look directly at the nature of attachment. Attachment is more than affection. It is the gripping, desperate need for another person to make us whole. It is the belief that without them, we cannot survive. In relationships, this often appears as jealousy, control, or dependency. We tell ourselves, "I will be happy when they love me perfectly," or "I cannot be happy if they leave me." The Buddha taught that such attachment inevitably leads to suffering because it rests on conditions we cannot control. People change, circumstances shift. No one can guarantee permanent love, constant attention, or eternal presence. When we demand permanence in a world of impermanence, we set ourselves up for pain. Yet there is another way to love. Instead of attachment, there is freedom. Instead of possession, there is appreciation. To love in freedom is to cherish another, not as an object we own, but as a gift we are privileged to experience. It is to say, "I love you as you are," without needing you to fulfill every expectation. This does not mean passivity or neglect. It means respecting the other as a complete being, with their own journey, their own joys, their own sorrows. It means walking together, not in chains, but in trust. This kind of love may not always look like the movies. It may not be filled with constant drama or endless fireworks, but it carries a deeper peace, a steady flame that does not burn out when the winds of life blow hard. Friendship also reveals these truths. Friends bring laughter, support, and connection, but they too can disappoint. Perhaps a trusted friend betrays confidence. Perhaps distance grows as life paths diverge. The pain of broken friendship can cut as deeply as the end of romance. Here too, mindfulness offers wisdom. When a friend hurts us, we can pause before reacting with anger. We can ask, what was their intention? What was my expectation? Sometimes forgiveness restores the bond. Sometimes letting go is the wiser path. Either way, compassion softens the sting, reminding us that every person is imperfect, including ourselves. Family brings its own complexities. Parents carry hopes for their children, and children carry expectations of their parents. These hopes and expectations often collide, leading to misunderstanding, conflict, or disappointment. The Buddha spoke often about honoring parents, but he also emphasized the importance of understanding. To honor does not mean blind obedience. It means recognizing the sacrifices, the humanity, the struggles behind the roles. A parent who criticizes may be carrying their own wounds. A child who rebels may be searching for their own path. Mindfulness allows us to see beyond roles and labels, to meet each other as human beings in the process of growing. In this way, family bonds can heal, not by erasing differences, but by embracing compassion. One of the most powerful practices in relationships is forgiveness. Not the shallow kind that says, "It's fine," while resentment festers. True forgiveness is a deep release of anger, a decision to let go of the burden we carry. It does not excuse harm. It does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to poison our own hearts with hatred. The Buddha compared holding on to anger to grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. In the end, we are the ones burned. Forgiveness is the act of dropping the coal. It frees us to move forward, lighter, clearer, more open to love again. But what about loneliness? In a world more connected than ever, loneliness is at epidemic levels. Social media shows endless images of togetherness, yet many scroll in silence, feeling more isolated with every swipe. Loneliness is not simply the absence of people. It is the absence of meaningful connection. The Buddha taught that true community, or sangha, is essential to the path of awakening. We need companions who support our growth, who remind us of our values, who walk beside us when the road is hard. In modern life, building such community requires intention. It means seeking out spaces where authenticity is valued over performance, where listening matters more than impressing, where compassion is practiced as much as preached. When we find this kind of connection, loneliness softens, replaced by a sense of belonging. Let us reflect on the practice of mindful communication. So often, conflict in relationships arises not from malice, but from poor communication. We speak without listening. We listen only to prepare our response. We assume, we judge, we interrupt. Mindful communication changes this pattern. It invites us to pause before speaking, to breathe, to ask, is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? When we listen mindfully, we focus fully on the other, not on our own agenda. We hear not only their words, but the feelings beneath them. This kind of listening is rare, but it has the power to transform relationships. It creates safety, where honesty can flourish. It builds trust, where wounds can heal. It reminds us that connection begins not with agreement, but with presence. Asterisk. As we deepen in mindfulness, we also recognize that relationships are impermanent. People come and go. Friendships shift. Partners change. Families evolve. To cling to the illusion that relationships will stay exactly as they are is to invite suffering. But to accept impermanence is to cherish relationships more deeply, knowing they are precious precisely because they are not guaranteed. Each moment with a loved one becomes sacred. Each shared laugh, each tender word, each silent presence carries immeasurable value. Impermanence does not diminish love, it intensifies it. It teaches us to say, I love you today, to forgive. Today, to appreciate today, because tomorrow is uncertain. Let us close this reflection with a meditation. Bring to mind someone you love. See their face. Imagine them smiling. Now silently repeat, I see you. I honor you. I love you as you are. Feel the warmth in your chest. Now bring to mind someone with whom you have conflict. See their face. Notice the tension in your body. Breathe. Silently repeat, I see your humanity. I release my need to control you. May you find peace. This meditation does not erase all conflict, but it plants seeds of compassion. With practice, these seeds grow into stronger, healthier connections. Relationships are both our challenge and our path. They demand patience, courage, and vulnerability, but they also offer the most fertile ground for practicing love, compassion, and forgiveness. In healing our relationships, we heal ourselves. In learning to love without clinging, to forgive without forgetting, to connect without control, we move closer to freedom. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom applied to human bonds. not to escape love, but to transform it, not to avoid pain, but to let it teach us, not to seek perfect partners, but to cultivate perfect compassion. And yet, even when relationships are strong, another shadow often lingers: anxiety, the restless mind, the constant worry, the endless what-ifs. Anxiety can creep into love, into work, into every corner of life, robbing us of peace. It is one of the most widespread struggles of the modern age, and it is the next valley we must enter together. There is a quiet trembling that lives in the hearts of millions, and its name is anxiety. It does not always shout. Often it whispers an uneasy thought before bed, a knot in the stomach before a meeting, a restless energy that lingers even when nothing seems wrong. Anxiety is the restless mind's shadow, a constant what-if that robs people of peace. In today's world, it has become a silent epidemic. While medicine can diagnose it, while society can name it, countless individuals still suffer alone, believing something is broken inside them. But anxiety is not a personal flaw. It is the natural outcome of a mind caught in the storms of fear and uncertainty. And while it may feel overwhelming, ancient wisdom offers a way to face it with courage, compassion, and clarity. To understand anxiety, we must first see its nature. It is the mind projecting into the future, spinning scenarios that may never happen. What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if they leave me? What if the world collapses? These questions spiral endlessly, feeding tension in the body's shallow breathing, racing heartbeat, sweaty palms. The body reacts as if danger is present, even when none exists. Long ago, this reaction kept our ancestors alive. Fear of predators sharpened their senses, fueled their muscles, kept them alert. But in the modern world, the dangers are no longer lions in the grass. They are deadlines, debts, and doubts. The body reacts the same way, but the threats never end, so the system never rests. Anxiety becomes chronic, a constant hum beneath the surface of daily life. Imagine Michael, a college student. From the outside, he appeared successful. Good grades, active in sports, plenty of friends. But inside, he carried a storm. Every exam felt like a test of his worth. Every social gathering left him worrying whether people secretly disliked him. At night, his mind replayed the day's conversations, analyzing every word. He feared the future, feared failure, feared being exposed. As not enough, his anxiety was invisible to others, but it consumed him. Like so many, Michael lived in a prison with invisible bars. The door was unlocked, but he did not know how to walk through. The Buddha spoke often about the restless mind. He compared it to a candle flickering in the wind, never steady. He saw how craving and fear drive the mind into endless cycles of worry. His solution was not to deny fear, but to meet it with awareness. Anxiety thrives in the shadows of unawareness. When we are lost in thoughts about the future or regrets about the past, the antidote is presence. When we anchor in the present moment, anxiety begins to lose its grip. This is why mindfulness is such a powerful medicine. It teaches us to observe the waves of thought without being drowned by them. It reminds us that the only moment we truly live is now. But before solutions, we must honor the pain. Anxiety is exhausting. It is not just in your head. It affects every part of life. People cancel opportunities out of fear. They avoid relationships to escape rejection. They numb themselves with alcohol, screens, or endless work to silence the buzzing mind. Anxiety steals sleep, strains health, and leaves many feeling ashamed, as if they are weak for not being able to just relax. But anxiety is not weakness, it is suffering. And like all suffering, it deserves compassion, not judgment. This is the first step on the path, to stop fighting anxiety as an enemy and to begin holding it gently As a wounded child who needs comfort, let us imagine anxiety as a stormy sky. Dark clouds roll, thunder rumbles, winds howl. In the middle of the storm, it feels eternal. But above the clouds, the sky is vast, open, untouched. The Buddha taught that our true mind is like this sky-clear, spacious, luminous. Thoughts and worries are the clouds. They come and go. They may seem overwhelming, but they cannot destroy the sky. Mindfulness is the act of remembering the sky, of stepping back from the storm to rest in awareness. When you observe your anxiety, instead of identifying with it, you discover a powerful truth. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. Practical steps bring this wisdom to life. The first is the breath. Anxiety shortens the breath, keeping it shallow and fast. By consciously slowing the breath, you signal safety to the body. Try this. Breathe into the count of 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Repeat. As the breath deepens, the heart rate slows, the muscles relax, the mind softens. This simple practice can transform panic into presence. The Buddha himself emphasized breathing as the foundation of meditation. Breathing in, I calm the body. Breathing out, I calm the mind. In every anxious moment, the breath is a doorway. Back to peace. The second step is observation. When anxious thoughts arise, instead of wrestling with them, label them gently. Worrying, imagining, planning. By naming the thought, you create space between yourself and the worry. The thought no longer defines you. It becomes an event in the mind, like a cloud passing through the sky. This practice is called noting, and it is a cornerstone of mindfulness. Over time, it reveals that thoughts have no solid substance. They rise, they fall, they vanish. You do not need to believe every story your mind tells. The third step is compassion. Anxiety often comes with self-criticism. Why am I like this? Why can't I be normal? Such harshness only deepens the suffering. Instead, imagine speaking to yourself as you would to a friend in pain. It's okay. You are safe. You are doing your best. This gentle voice calms the inner storm. In Buddhist practice, compassion is not weakness. It is strength. It allows us to face fear without collapsing, to hold suffering without being consumed by it. Anxiety also thrives on uncertainty, and life is nothing if not uncertain. The Buddha named this truth clearly. Everything changes. Trying to control the uncontrollable is the root of much anxiety. We cling to plans, to outcomes, to guarantees, but reality refuses to be boxed in. The path of wisdom is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to make peace with it. To say, I do not know what tomorrow brings, but I can meet it when it comes. This shift does not erase fear, but it transforms it into openness. Life becomes less about control and more about trust in our ability to respond. Trust in the resilience of the heart. Trust in the unfolding of the path. Science again echoes these teachings. Research shows that mindfulness meditation reduces anxiety by calming the nervous system and reshaping brain activity. People who practice regularly report fewer panic attacks, less rumination, and greater emotional balance. This does not mean anxiety disappears forever. It means we learn to live with it differently, to stop being its prisoner. The Buddha did not promise a life without storms. He promised a way to walk through storms with peace. As Michael discovered, the turning point came not when he eliminated worry, but when he stopped believing every anxious thought. Through practice, he learned to see his thoughts as stories, not truths. He practiced breathing before exams, noting before social gatherings, compassion before sleep. Slowly, the anxiety softened. It did not vanish, but it no longer ruled him. He discovered moments of calm he thought were impossible. He discovered that peace was not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of awareness. And this is where our journey in anxiety begins, with presence, with breath, with compassion. The restless mind may not quiet overnight, but with practice, its grip loosens. Slowly, you begin to trust yourself again. Slowly, you begin to live again. Anxiety becomes not a curse, but a teacher, guiding you to deeper strength, patience, and resilience. Anxiety can feel like an enemy, but when viewed through the lens of wisdom, it becomes a teacher. It teaches us where we are clinging to certainty in an uncertain world. It reveals the places where fear still lives in our hearts. It reminds us of the fragility of life, and in doing so, it calls us to presence. If we can shift from fighting anxiety to learning from it, the restless mind transforms into a path of awakening God. Let us look at the nature of anxious thoughts more closely. They almost always begin with the phrase, "What if? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if people judge me?" These two words, "what if," fuel endless suffering. Yet, if we examine them, we see that "what if" points only to an imagined future, not a real one. The Buddha invited his followers to look at reality as it is, not as the mind invents. In the present moment, most fears do not exist. Right now, you are breathing. Right now, you are alive. Right now, you are safe. Anxiety pulls us into 1,000 possible futures. Mindfulness returns us to this single, undeniable truth, the present moment. There is a story of a farmer who worried constantly about the future. He worried about drought, about floods, about pests. He worried his harvest would fail, his family would starve, his life would collapse. One day, a wise monk asked him, "Tell me, how many of these disasters have actually happened?" The farmer paused, then admitted, "Almost none." The monk smiled and said, "Then you have been suffering from 10,000 problems that never existed." This story reveals the heart of anxiety. It is often suffering borrowed from the future, suffering that may never arrive. When we see this, we can laugh gently at the mind's tricks and return to what is real. This does not mean that anxiety is solved by logic alone. The body remembers. Trauma, stress, and exhaustion leave imprints that cannot be erased by reason. This is why the practice must include the body. Walking meditation is one such practice. Each step becomes a reminder. Here, now, safe. Slowly, walking, feeling the ground beneath your feet, repeating silently, "I have arrived. I am home." This simple act grounds the body, quiets the nervous system, and anchors awareness. Over time, the body learns safety again, and the mind follows. Another practice is gratitude. Anxiety focuses on what could go wrong. Gratitude shifts attention to what is already right. Each evening, write down 3 things for which you are grateful. They need not be grand. A meal, a smile, a moment of rest. Over time, this rewires the brain, training it to notice goodness instead of only threat. Gratitude does not erase anxiety, but it balances it, reminding the mind that life is not only danger, it is also blessing. Community also plays a vital role. Anxiety thrives in isolation. Alone, worries echo louder. Together, they soften. Sharing our fears with trusted friends, mentors, or communities allows us to see that we are not alone. The Buddha emphasized Sangha spiritual community as essential to the path. When we gather with others who practice mindfulness, compassion, and presence, their stability supports our own. The burden becomes lighter when carried together. Sometimes, anxiety teaches us to let go of perfection. Many who struggle with worry hold themselves to impossible standards. They fear failure because they cannot accept imperfection. But imperfection is the nature of life. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are imperfect, incomplete, impermanent. To demand flawlessness is to demand the impossible. When we soften into imperfection, we release much of our fear. We learn to say, "I will do my best, and that is enough." This humility brings freedom. Consider Anna, a young mother who battled panic attacks. She feared leaving her house, convinced something terrible would happen to her or her child. Therapy and meditation slowly taught her to see her panic as a wave. When the wave rose, she would breathe, remind herself, "This will pass," and ride it. At first, it felt unbearable, but over time, she noticed that the waves always subsided. They lost their terror. Eventually, she returned to daily life, still with occasional panic, but no longer paralyzed by it. Her story illustrates a central truth. Anxiety may not disappear, but it becomes manageable when we stop resisting it. In acceptance, fear loses its sharpest edge. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence also offers comfort. No feeling lasts forever. Joy fades, but so does sorrow. Fear rises, but so does peace. When anxiety surges, it feels eternal. But if we sit with it, breathe with it, and observe, we see that it changes. It rises, peaks, and falls. Remembering this truth gives us patience. We no longer panic at panic. We watch it come and go, knowing it is not permanent. Anxiety is also a reminder of compassion. When we experience it ourselves, we begin to understand the struggles of others more deeply. We realize how many live with silent battles. This understanding can soften our hearts, making us gentler, kinder, less judgmental. In this way, our suffering becomes a bridge to connection, allowing us to walk with others in their pain. Perhaps the deepest lesson anxiety offers is humility. It reminds us that we are not in control. We cannot predict every outcome. We cannot prevent every loss. But we can choose how we meet uncertainty. We can meet it with fear, or we can meet it with faith, not blind faith in miracles, but faith in our resilience, in our capacity to adapt, in the strength of compassion and awareness. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching, not to eliminate all suffering, but to discover freedom within it. Let us close this section with a practice of calming the anxious mind. Sit quietly. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Whisper to yourself, "It's okay. I am here. I am safe." Breathe deeply. Imagine anxiety as a small child within you, frightened and restless. Hold this child in your heart. Speak gently. "I know you are scared. I am here with you. You are not alone." Feel the tenderness that arises. This practice shifts anxiety from an enemy to a companion, one that can be comforted, soothed, and eventually transformed. Anxiety will always visit. It is part of being human, but it does not need to rule us. With mindfulness, compassion, community, and courage, we can walk through anxiety with dignity. We can learn to see it as a teacher of presence, a reminder of impermanence, a call to compassion. In this way, anxiety becomes not the end of peace, but the doorway to deeper peace. And as we step forward, we see that anxiety is often tied to the search for meaning. Beneath the restless questions of "what if" lies the deeper question: why am I here? What is the purpose of all this? To explore this question, we must turn to the heart of suffering and meaning itself, the search for freedom from the endless cycle of dissatisfaction. This is the valley we will enter next. There are moments when life feels hollow. You wake, go to work, pay the bills, watch television, scroll through endless screens, then fall asleep only to repeat it all again the next day. Outwardly, nothing is wrong. You may have enough money, relationships, and comfort, yet inwardly something aches. A quiet question echoes in the heart. Is this all there is? This is the pain of meaninglessness, and it has become one of the most pervasive struggles of modern times. In earlier centuries, many people found meaning in religion, community, or tradition. Stories passed from generation to generation gave life a sense of direction. Today, those anchors have weakened. In a world driven by consumerism, competition, and technology, many are left adrift. We are told to pursue success, but when success comes, it often feels empty. We are told to pursue pleasure, but pleasure fades quickly. We are told to pursue recognition, but applause cannot fill the silence of the soul. This emptiness does not always look like despair. Often, it looks like boredom, restlessness, or the constant search for distraction. But beneath the surface lies a deep hunger, the hunger for meaning. Consider James, a man in his 40s. He had everything society told him to want: a stable career, a beautiful home, a loving family. Yet he often found himself staring out the window late at night, feeling an emptiness he could not explain. He told himself to be grateful, but gratitude did not erase the ache. He tried hobbies, vacations, new goals. Each brought temporary relief, but the hunger always returned. Finally, in a moment of honesty, he admitted to himself, "I don't know why I'm here." James's story is echoed in countless lives. The pain of meaninglessness does not discriminate. It touches the rich and poor, the successful and the struggling alike. It is the silent crisis behind many midlife breakdowns, addictions, and depressions. The Buddha spoke directly to this pain. He called it dukkha, the unsatisfactory nature of existence. Even when we achieve what we desire, satisfaction does not last. We long for permanence, but everything changes. We long for certainty, but life is unpredictable. We long for ultimate meaning, but cling to fleeting things. This endless cycle leaves us restless, chasing one goal after another without ever finding lasting peace. The Buddha named this cycle the root of suffering, but he also offered a way out, not by denying the pain of emptiness, but by transforming it into a path of awakening. One of his most profound teachings is anatta, the insight of Allah, no self. We often build our sense of meaning on identity. I am my career, my possessions, my relationships, my achievements. But all of these are fragile. Careers end, possessions break, relationships shift, achievements fade. If our meaning rests only on these, it will crumble. The Buddha invites us to look deeper. Beneath the shifting roles and labels, there is awareness, itself the capacity to see, to love, to awaken. Meaning is not found in clinging to external forms. It is found in touching this deeper reality, in realizing that we are more than the fleeting stories we tell about ourselves. This realization does not lead to despair. On the contrary, it leads to freedom. When we stop demanding that life give us permanent meaning, we begin to discover meaning in the present moment. Washing the dishes, listening to a child, feeling the breath, all become sacred when met with awareness. Instead of searching endlessly for purpose out there, we begin to live with purpose right here. The Buddha taught that the path is not about finding some grand answer, but about living with clarity, compassion, and mindfulness in each step. Meaning arises not from what we own, but from how we live. Science, once again, affirms this. Psychologists studying happiness have found that those who focus only on pleasure often report emptiness, while those who live with purpose report deeper fulfillment, even in hardship. Purpose does not require fame or fortune. It often appears in small acts of care, in service to others, in creating beauty, in practicing kindness. In Buddhist language, this is right intention, living with clarity of heart, guided by compassion and wisdom. When we align our actions with these values, life begins to feel meaningful, no matter the external circumstances. Imagine Anna, a nurse working long shifts in a busy hospital. Her days are filled with stress, exhaustion, and endless demands. Yet she feels a sense of purpose. Each time she comforts a patient, each time she eases pain, each time she offers kindness, she feels connected to something larger than herself. Her life is not glamorous, but it is meaningful. The Buddha would say that Anna is living in harmony with the path, not because of her profession alone, but because of the intention she carries within it. Her story reminds us that meaning is not about scale. It is about depth. But what about those who feel lost, who cannot see any clear purpose? Here, mindfulness offers guidance. Instead of demanding an answer, we begin by paying attention. What moments bring a sense of aliveness? What actions leave a warm glow in the heart? What choices ease suffering for ourselves and others? These are clues to meaning. The Buddha encouraged his followers to test his teachings, not to accept them blindly. In the same way, we can experiment in our lives, trying small acts of service, practicing mindfulness, cultivating compassion, and noticing how these shape our sense of purpose. Meaning is discovered, not imposed. Another powerful teaching is interbeing, the recognition that all life is interconnected. When we feel meaningless, it is often because we feel isolated, cut off from the whole. Interbeing shows us that we are never separate. The breath we take comes from the trees. The food we eat comes from the earth and countless hands. Our very existence is woven from the lives of others. To recognize this is to see that our lives are not meaningless at all. Each act, each word, each thought ripples outward, touching the web of existence. In this light, even small moments matter. Even a smile can be meaningful. Of course, the path is not always easy. The ache of emptiness can feel overwhelming. In those moments, the Buddha offered a practice of simple presence. Just sit, breathe, and be with what is. Do not rush to escape the emptiness. Do not drown it in distraction. Simply feel it. Often, beneath emptiness lies a longing for connection, for presence, for love. By turning toward it instead of away, we discover that the hollow space is not a void but a doorway to deeper awareness, to compassion, to freedom. Let us practice together. Close your eyes. Breathe. Bring to mind the question, what gives my life meaning in this moment? Do not force an answer. Simply sit with the question. Notice what arises. An image of a loved one, a memory of kindness, a sense of stillness. Trust that meaning is not something you must invent. It is already here, waiting to be recognized in the simple act of being alive. As James discovered, when he stopped chasing meaning as a distant goal and began practicing mindfulness in daily life, the ache began to soften. He found meaning in listening to his children, in tending his garden, in meditating each morning. The question, why am I here, did not vanish, but it no longer haunted him. He discovered that meaning is not a final destination, but a way of walking the path. Each step can carry purpose if taken with awareness. And this is the invitation. To stop searching endlessly for the grand answer and to begin living the small answers moment by moment. To see that purpose is not out there waiting to be found, but right here in how we live, how we love, how we awaken. The search for meaning is not unique to our time. Across history, people have wrestled with the same question. Why am I here? But in the modern age, the pace of life and the collapse of traditional structures have made this question feel sharper. The philosopher may analyze it, the artist may express it, but in the quiet of night, it is the ordinary person who feels it most. And so the Buddha's teachings remain urgent today. They invite us to turn the ache of emptiness into the soil for awakening. One of his core teachings is the Noble Eightfold Path. At first glance, it may appear like a set of rules, but in truth, it is a map for living meaningfully. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are not commandments, but practices. They show us how to align daily life with wisdom and compassion. When we live this way, even ordinary acts carry meaning. Speaking kindly, working honestly, listening deeply, these become sacred. The path does not demand extraordinary heroism. It asks only for presence, integrity, and love in the ordinary moments of life. And in these moments, we discover that meaning is not missing. It is woven into every breath. Consider the story of Mara, the tempter who confronted the Buddha as he meditated under the Bodhi tree. Mara whispered doubts. "Who are you to seek awakening? You are worthless. The world is meaningless." The Buddha did not argue. He did not run. He simply touched the earth and said, "The earth is my witness." In that gesture, he affirmed connection, belonging, and presence. He refused to be trapped by emptiness. This story speaks to us today. When doubt whispers, when life feels meaningless, we too can touch the earth, literally or figuratively. We can remember our connection, our presence, our capacity to awaken. The earth itself bears witness that our lives matter. Meaning also arises through service. When we turn our attention from ourselves to others, emptiness often softens. Helping a neighbor, volunteering, or simply offering a smile can spark a sense of purpose. Service does not erase all suffering, but it shifts the focus from what is missing to what can be given. The Buddha encouraged generosity not only as a virtue, but as a medicine for the restless heart. To give is to connect. To give is to affirm that life, even with its pain, can be meaningful. In giving, we find ourselves and yet meaning is not always about doing. Sometimes it is about being. In meditation, when the mind quiets and the heart opens, many discover a sense of deep peace, a presence beyond words. In that silence, the question, "What is the meaning of life?" begins to dissolve. Instead, there is simply life itself, luminous and whole. The Buddha described awakening as tasting the deathless, the reality beyond birth and death, gain and loss. In this state, meaning is not something to be found. It is something to be lived, moment by moment, breath by breath. Of course, most of us are not monks sitting under trees. We live in busy cities with jobs, families, and responsibilities. But the beauty of the Buddha's teaching is that it does not demand escape. It invites transformation right where we are. Washing dishes can be a meditation. Driving to work can be a meditation. Speaking to a colleague can be a meditation. When we bring mindfulness to these moments, they become filled with meaning. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Life itself becomes the answer. Let us practice now. Take a deep breath. Look around the room. Notice one thing you often overlook: a plant, a cup, a beam of light. Gaze at it with full attention. Notice its shape, its color, its presence. Feel gratitude for it. In that moment, meaning arises. It is not grand, not abstract, but real. This simple act shows us that meaning is not hidden in distant goals, but present in simple awareness. For those who still feel lost, remember, emptiness is not the end. It is the beginning. The ache itself is a sign of awakening, a sign that the soul longs for more than distraction. To feel the ache is to be alive. The Buddha's teaching invites us to honor that ache, to let it guide us inward toward presence, compassion, and awakening. The journey may be long, but every step on the path is meaningful. James, the man who once stared out his window in despair, eventually found peace not by discovering a single grand purpose, but by living each day with small intentions. He began to meditate each morning, to volunteer at a local shelter, to spend more time with his children. Slowly, the ache softened. His life did not become free of struggle, but it became filled with meaning. He discovered what the Buddha taught, that true purpose is not found in clinging to identity, but in living with awareness and compassion. Asterisk, this is the promise of the path, to transform emptiness into fullness, restlessness into peace, despair into compassion. Meaning is not a distant prize. It is here, now, in every breath, in every act of love, in every moment of awakening. And yet, as we continue, we must face another shadow of modern life: despair. When emptiness is left unaddressed, when anxiety and meaninglessness combine, many fall into hopelessness. Depression, loneliness, and despair weigh heavily on countless hearts. The next valley of our journey will take us into this darkness, not to remain there, but to discover the light of hope that even despair cannot extinguish. There are days when the world feels unbearably heavy, days when getting out of bed seems impossible, when the simple act of brushing your teeth or making breakfast feels like climbing a mountain. For some, these days stretch into weeks, months, even years. This is the landscape of despair and depression, a shadow that grips countless lives in silence. Unlike stress or anxiety, which often keep the mind buzzing, despair is different. It is a shutting down, a collapse of energy, a voice whispering that nothing matters. In a world that values productivity and cheerfulness, those who live with despair often feel invisible, ashamed, or broken. But they are not broken. They are human, walking through one of the darkest valleys of existence. And even in that valley, light can be found. The pain of despair is not always visible. A person may smile in public, laugh at jokes, and continue performing their duties, while inside they feel empty. They may withdraw from friends, avoid activities they once loved, or spend long hours staring into space. Depression is often misunderstood as weakness or laziness. In truth, it is a profound form of suffering, as real and as serious as any physical illness. To those within it, life can feel drained of color. Joy becomes distant, hope feels unreachable, and even the future appears meaningless. For some, despair whispers the most dangerous lie, that life itself is not worth living. The Buddha knew of this suffering. He spoke of it not in the language of modern psychology, but in the language of the heart. He described the mind weighed down by delusion, clouded by hopelessness, trapped in the belief that escape is impossible. Yet his teachings are filled with stories of people who, in their darkest moments, found renewal. Monks overwhelmed by doubt, the people crushed by grief, kings drowning in sorrow, all came to him with despair. And he met them not with judgment, but with compassion. His message was clear: despair is not the end. It can be the beginning of awakening. To understand how, we must first honor despair for what it is. Too often, people rush to fix it with cheerful words or shallow advice. Think positive. Look on the bright side. Others have it worse. Such responses, though well-meaning, only deepen the pain, making the sufferer feel unseen. The first step is to acknowledge despair fully, to say, yes, this is suffering. Yes, this is heavy. Yes, it hurts. In Buddhist practice, this is mindfulness applied to despair, turning toward the pain instead of away, naming it gently, breathing with it, holding it with compassion. When despair is met with awareness, it begins to soften. It does not vanish instantly, but it loses its power to isolate. Imagine despair as a dark cave. At first, it feels suffocating, endless, a place of death. But if you bring a single candle into that cave, even the smallest flame, the darkness begins to change. The cave is still there, but it is no longer absolute. The candle is mindfulness, awareness, compassion. It is the act of sitting with despair, breathing with it, refusing to turn away. The darkness does not disappear, but it is illuminated. And in that illumination, hope can begin to grow. One powerful teaching for those in despair is impermanence. When depression whispers, "This will last forever," the Buddha reminds us, Nothing lasts forever. All feelings, no matter how heavy, are impermanent. They rise, they stay, they pass. This truth does not trivialize despair. It offers hope. Even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. Even the heaviest storm eventually clears. When we remember impermanence, we discover patience. We learn to say, "This moment is unbearable, but it will not last forever. I can breathe through this moment. I can survive this moment." One breath, then another, then another. Slowly, a path opens. Another essential teaching is compassion, not only for others, but for ourselves. Depression often carries a cruel inner voice. You are worthless. You are a burden. You don't deserve love. These lies cut deeper than any external criticism. The Buddha taught that we must meet these inner voices with metta, loving kindness. We must learn to speak to ourselves as we would to a dear friend in pain. I know you are suffering. I am here for you. May you be safe. May you find peace. At first, such words may feel false, but repeated gently, they begin to plant seeds of healing. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is medicine for thee. Wounded heart. Stories can also bring light. There is the tale of Kisagotami, a young mother whose only child died. Overcome with grief, she carried the small body from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back. Finally, she came to the Buddha. He told her he could help, but only if she found a mustard seed from a household untouched by death. She searched every home, but in every house, she found someone who had lost a loved one. Slowly, she realized she was not alone in her grief. Returning to the Buddha, she understood. Death comes to all. Her child was gone, but her heart began to awaken. Through her despair, she discovered compassion for all who suffer loss. Her story is one of transformation, from despair to wisdom, from isolation to connection. Despair often convinces us that we are alone, but we are never alone. Millions walk this valley, even if they do not speak of it. The Buddha's teaching of interbeing reminds us that we are connected always. When we reach out, even in small ways, a phone call, a conversation, a shared silence, we begin to feel the thread of connection again. Community does not erase despair, but it lightens the load. The Sangha, the community of practice, is one of the Buddha's greatest gifts. Within it, we find people who can sit with us in silence, listen without judgment, and remind us that we are not forgotten. Practical practices can help ease despair. Walking meditation, even for 5 minutes, reconnects the body with the earth. Breathing meditation, focusing simply on in and out, calms the nervous system. Gratitude practice, even in despair, can reveal small lights, the warmth of a blanket, the taste of water, the sound of a bird. These are not cures, but they are steps. Each step is a candle in the cave. Each breath is a reminder. Life is still here. Healing is still possible. Despair may also be an invitation to reevaluate. Sometimes it arises because we have been living out of alignment with our values, our needs, our true selves. Depression can be the soul's way of saying, something must change. This is not to blame the sufferer, but to recognize that despair may carry wisdom. By listening closely, by asking, what is this pain teaching me? We may discover a new direction, a new way of living. The Buddha's path is not about returning to the old life unchanged. It is about awakening to a new way of being. And yet we must speak honestly. Sometimes despair leads to thoughts of ending life. If you or someone you know walks this edge, know this truth. The desire is not truly to die. It is the desire to end suffering. The Buddha's teaching is clear. Suffering can end, but life must continue for that ending to unfold. There is help. There is hope. There are people ready to listen and to walk with you through the dark. Reaching out is not weakness. It is courage. It is the first step back toward the light. The heart of the Buddha's message to those in despair is this: do not give up. Even in the darkest cave, a candle can be lit. Even in the heaviest storm, the sky is still vast and open above. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are a human being walking a difficult path, and within you lies the seed of awakening. Nurture that seed with breath, with compassion, with community. Slowly, it will grow. Slowly, the light will return. Despair often feels like the end of the road. The mind whispers, there is no way forward. Nothing will change. Yet history, stories, and lived experience reveal another truth. Despair can be a turning point, a doorway to transformation. The Buddha never promised that life would be free from suffering. He promised that suffering could become the path to awakening. In this way, despair is not a dead end, but a crossroads. And at that crossroads, we are invited to choose, to give up or to keep walking, step by step, breath by breath. One of the most powerful ways to keep walking is through community. Alone, despair feels endless. Together, it softens. This is why the Buddha emphasized the importance of Sangha, the community of practice. When we sit with others in meditation, when we share our stories, when we listen to the silence together, we remember that we are not alone. The presence of others becomes a mirror reflecting back our humanity when we cannot see it ourselves. Even in modern life, community can be found in support groups, spiritual gatherings, therapy circles, or simply in friendships built on honesty. To reach out in despair is one of the bravest acts a person can take because it cracks open walls of isolation and allows light to enter. Another key is service. When despair tells us that life is meaningless, service gives us a reason to rise. Helping another person, even in small ways, sparks a sense of purpose. It reminds us that our existence matters. The Buddha praised generosity not only as a virtue, but as a medicine for suffering hearts. When we give, whether a smile, a kind word, or our time, we break the cycle of self-absorption that fuels despair. Service shifts the focus from the heaviness within to the connection without. It is not about denying our pain, but about transforming it into compassion for others. The natural world also holds medicine for despair. The Buddha often taught outdoors, surrounded by trees, rivers, and open skies. He reminded his followers to contemplate the impermanence of nature, the falling leaf, the flowing stream, the passing clouds. In modern life, many have forgotten this wisdom, yet it remains available. A walk in the park, a moment watching the sunrise, a breath taken under the stars. These remind us that life is larger than our sorrow. Nature does not rush us, does not judge us. It simply holds us, offering quiet strength. For those in despair, reconnecting with nature can be a profound form of healing. There is also the practice of remembering joy. Depression often convinces us that joy is gone forever. But joy is not gone. It may be hidden, buried, or distant, but it still exists. A practice is to notice even the smallest sparks, the taste of warm tea, the laughter of a child, the softness of a pillow. These are not trivial. They are doorways back to life. The Buddha encouraged mindfulness of joy as much as mindfulness of suffering. By training ourselves to notice and appreciate these small joys, we begin to remember that life still holds beauty, even in the midst of pain. Consider David, a man who fell into despair after losing his job. He felt worthless, invisible, and hopeless. For months, he isolated himself, convinced his life was over. One day, a friend invited him to volunteer at a food bank. Reluctantly, he agreed. At first, it felt meaningless. But as he handed out meals and spoke with people, something stirred. He realized that his presence made a difference, however small. Over time, his despair began to lift. He still faced uncertainty, but he no longer felt worthless. Service had reawakened his sense of value. David's story shows that despair can be transformed when we take even small steps toward connection and purpose. The Buddha also taught the importance of right effort. This means not forcing ourselves to achieve perfection, but making small, consistent efforts toward healing. In despair, even small actions, taking a shower, making the bed, stepping outside, can feel monumental. Each small act is a victory. Each breath taken in awareness is a triumph. Over time, these small acts accumulate, creating momentum toward renewal. Right effort is gentle, not harsh. It says, do what you can today. Tomorrow, try again. Healing is not a straight line. It is a slow unfolding, full of setbacks and breakthroughs. Patience is essential. And yet, we must also acknowledge that some despair requires professional help. The Buddha encouraged wisdom. And wisdom in our time includes seeking therapy, counseling, or medical support when needed. These are not contradictions to spiritual practice. They are expressions of it. To seek help is to honor the truth of suffering and to act with compassion toward oneself. Medication, therapy, and support systems can be the modern equivalents of the Buddha's medicines and teachings tools to ease suffering and restore balance. There is no shame in using them. They are part of the path. Perhaps the deepest lesson of despair is humility. It strips away illusions of control, success, and self-sufficiency. It brings us face to face with our vulnerability. And in that vulnerability lies the seed of compassion. Those who have walked through despair often emerge with greater empathy, greater tenderness, greater wisdom. They know what it means to hurt, and so they know how to comfort. In this way, despair becomes not only personal suffering, but also the soil of collective healing. Through our wounds, we learn to heal others. Let us close this section with a meditation for renewal. Sit comfortably. Place your hands over your heart. Breathe gently. Whisper to yourself, I am still here. I am still breathing. I am still alive. With each breath, imagine a small light glowing in your chest. At first, it is faint, flickering, but with each breath, it grows stronger. This is the light of resilience, the light of hope. Even in despair, this light never fully goes out. Nurture it with breath, with kindness, with patience. Trust that it will grow. The valley of despair is dark, but it is not endless. With mindfulness, compassion, community, and patience, renewal is possible. The Buddha's path is not about avoiding despair, but about transforming it. From darkness, light can emerge. From emptiness, purpose can arise. From despair, hope can be born. And as we move forward, we turn to another great challenge of modern life: anger. For even when despair lifts, the fires of anger often remain anger at others, at ourselves, at the injustices of the world. 2. Face anger is to face one of the most powerful forces of the human heart. It can destroy, but it can also be transformed into clarity and strength. This is the next step in our journey. There is a fire that burns in the human heart, and its name is anger. Sometimes it flares quickly, like a match struck in the dark. Other times it simmers quietly, smoldering for years beneath the surface. Anger can feel powerful, intoxicating, even righteous. Yet more often than not, it leaves behind ashes, broken words, broken trust, broken peace. In the modern world, anger has become one of the most destructive forces. We see it in politics, where division deepens daily. We see it in families, where arguments tear bonds apart. We see it on the streets, in traffic, in social media comments, where small sparks ignite into storms. Anger is everywhere, shaping our lives in ways we often regret. But why does anger hold such power? Because at its root, anger is pain. It is the cry of a wounded heart. When we feel wronged, ignored, or disrespected, anger rises to protect us. It is the body's way of saying, I matter, I hurt, pay attention. In this sense, anger is not evil. It is natural, even necessary at times. It can signal injustice, fuel courage, and inspire change. The problem is not anger itself, but how we relate to it. When anger controls us, it blinds us. It turns strength into violence, clarity into chaos. The Buddha compared anger to a blazing torch held against the wind. In trying to burn others, we burn ourselves first. Consider Lisa, a woman who carried anger for years toward her father. As a child, she felt neglected and unloved. As an adult, she told herself she had moved on. But each time she spoke to him, her voice tightened, her chest hardened, her words cut sharp. Her anger spilled into other relationships too, leaving her isolated and resentful. It was only when she began to practice mindfulness that she saw the truth. Beneath her anger was grief. Beneath the fire was a wound. When she finally allowed herself to feel the sadness, the anger softened. She did not excuse her father's mistakes, but she found freedom in releasing the chains of resentment. Lisa's story is common. Anger often masks deeper feelings: hurt, fear, loneliness. When we only fight the fire, we never heal the wound. Beneath, the Buddha taught that anger arises from three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed says, I want things my way. Hatred says, I want to destroy what I dislike. Delusion says, I see only my side, not the full truth. Together, these poisons feed the flames. But he also taught that each poison has an antidote. The antidote to greed is generosity. The antidote to hatred is love. The antidote to delusion is wisdom. In this way, the path of transformation is not about suppressing anger, but about cultivating its opposites: patience, compassion, understanding. One practical practice is mindful breathing. When anger rises, the body reacts, heart racing, muscles tightening, breath shortening. If we speak or act in this state, we almost always regret it. But if we pause, breathe, and allow the body to calm, clarity returns. A simple practice is to silently repeat, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I release my anger. Even a few breaths can create space between stimulus and response. In that space lies freedom. The freedom to choose words and actions that do not harm God. Another practice is perspective. Anger narrows vision, convincing us that we alone are right, that the other is entirely wrong. Mindfulness widens the lens. It asks, what pain might the other person carry? What circumstances shaped their actions? What have I not considered? This does not excuse harm, but it softens hatred. It reminds us that every person, even those who hurt us, is shaped by their own suffering. To see this is to open the door to compassion. There is a story of two monks traveling together. They came to a river where a woman stood unable to cross. One monk, bound by strict rules, refused to help. The other monk lifted her onto his shoulders and carried her across. Hours later, the first monk exploded with anger. How could you break the rules and touch that woman? The second monk replied calmly, I set her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her? This story reveals the nature of anger. Often, we carry grudges long after the event has passed. We replay it in our minds, feeding the flame. The practice is to set it down, to release the weight, to stop carrying what no longer serves. Anger also thrives on stories. They disrespected me. They betrayed me. They ruined everything. These stories loop endlessly, keeping the fire alive. Mindfulness invites us to step back from the story and observe the raw feeling. What does anger feel like in the body? Heat in the chest? Tightness in the jaw? By observing sensation instead of feeding the story, the fire begins to cool. This is not easy, but it is powerful. Over time, we learn that anger is not an enemy to be destroyed, but an energy to be transformed. Science supports this wisdom. Research shows that mindfulness practices reduce aggression, improve emotional regulation, and strengthen empathy. People who practice mindfulness report fewer angry outbursts, greater patience, and deeper connections in relationships. This does not mean they never feel anger. It means they are no longer ruled by it. The fire still burns, but it no longer consumes. Imagine a workplace where tempers flare often. Deadlines are tight, stress is high, mistakes are made. One manager, instead of reacting with anger, begins each meeting with a minute of silent breathing. At first, employees find it odd, but slowly the atmosphere shifts. Arguments soften. Patience grows. Productivity even improves. The simple act of pausing, breathing, and resetting becomes a tool for transformation. Anger is not eliminated, but it is channeled into clarity. This is the power of mindful leadership. In our own lives, we can practice this in simple ways. The next time anger rises, pause before speaking. Breathe. Ask, what is beneath this anger? What am I truly feeling? Perhaps it is hurt. Perhaps it is fear. By naming the deeper truth, we begin to heal. Then ask what action would bring. Peace, not more harm? Sometimes it may be silence. Sometimes it may be honest words spoken gently. Sometimes it may be walking away. Each time we choose wisely, we weaken the habit of anger and strengthen the habit of compassion. Yet, anger is not only personal, it also appears on a collective level. Communities, nations, and societies carry anger from injustice, oppression, and violence. Here too, the Buddha's teachings apply. He encouraged not passive acceptance of injustice, but wise action guided by compassion. Righteous anger, when transformed into love and clarity, can fuel change without hatred. Think of leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who spoke of justice not with bitterness, but with love. Their power came not from destroying enemies, but from transforming hearts. This is the highest form of anger's transformation, turning fire into light. Anger may seem destructive, but when transformed, it can become a source of great strength. The Buddha did not ask his followers to suppress anger, nor to indulge it. Instead, he taught them to understand it. To look deeply into anger is to see the pain beneath it, the causes that gave rise to it, and the possibility of transformation. In this way, anger becomes not a curse, but a teacher. Let us consider forgiveness. Many believe forgiveness means excusing harm, pretending it never happened, or letting someone off the hook. But true forgiveness is different. It does not erase the past. It releases the grip the past has on us. When we forgive, we are not saying that what was done was acceptable. We are saying that we will not let anger and resentment continue to poison our hearts. The Buddha compared anger to a hot coal. We hold it, intending to throw it at someone else, but we are the ones who are burned. Forgiveness is the act of dropping the coal. It frees us from self-destruction. This does not mean forgiveness is quick or easy. It is a process, sometimes taking years. But each step toward it is a step toward freedom. We begin by acknowledging our pain, feeling it fully without denial. Then, with compassion, we recognize that those who harmed us were themselves caught in ignorance, fear, or suffering. This does not justify their actions, but it helps us release hatred. Slowly, forgiveness becomes possible, not as a favor to them, but as a gift to ourselves. There is a story of a monk imprisoned and tortured for his beliefs. When asked years later how he survived, He replied, "I was in danger of losing my compassion." Despite unimaginable cruelty, his greatest fear was not physical pain, but the loss of love in his heart. His story is extraordinary, but it reveals a universal truth. Even in the face of injustice, the greatest victory is to keep compassion alive. Anger may flare, but if we can transform it into clarity and resolve, it becomes a force for good. On a more ordinary scale, think of family conflicts. Parents and children argue, siblings fight, partners clash. Words are said in anger that leave scars for years. But when even one person chooses patience, the cycle begins to shift. A child says, "I feel hurt when you shout," instead of shouting. Back, a parent apologizes, breaking the chain of pride. A partner listens instead of defending. These small acts, repeated over time, transform relationships. They show that anger, though powerful, is not invincible. Compassion can be stronger. Of the most practical tools for transforming anger is loving kindness meditation. Begin by wishing yourself peace. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. Then extend the wish to someone you love, someone neutral, someone difficult, and eventually to all beings. At first, extending kindness to those who anger us feels impossible. But with practice, the heart softens. Anger loses its grip, replaced by a deeper understanding that all beings suffer. All beings long for peace. Loving kindness does not erase injustice, but it gives us the strength to respond without hatred. Another tool is mindful speech. The Buddha taught that words can be like arrows or like balm. Anger often drives us to speak words we regret, words that wound deeply and cannot be taken back. Mindful speech asks us to pause and ask 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If the answer is no, silence may be the wiser choice. If the answer is yes, then speak gently, firmly, with clarity, but without cruelty. In this way, communication becomes a path of healing, not destruction. We must also recognize that anger can sometimes be righteous. In the face of injustice, oppression, or cruelty, anger may arise as a natural response. But if it hardens into hatred, it poisons our cause. History shows that the most effective movements for justice were rooted not in rage alone, but in love and vision. Anger can light the fire, but compassion must guide the flame. Without compassion, anger destroys. With compassion, anger becomes determination, resilience, and courage. This is how individuals and societies can transform injustice without perpetuating cycles of violence. In our personal lives, anger often hides self-anger, the disappointment we feel toward ourselves. We lash out at others when deep down, we are angry at our own mistakes, our own perceived failures. Here too, compassion is the key. To forgive others, we must first learn to forgive ourselves. To release anger outward, we must release anger inward. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is recognition of our shared humanity, our imperfection, our struggle. When we learn to speak gently to ourselves, our anger toward others naturally lessens. Let us close with a practice. Bring to mind a recent moment when you felt anger. Recall the sensations in your body, the heat, the tightness, the rush. Now breathe deeply. Imagine placing a cool cloth over the fire, soothing it. Say silently, "I see you, anger. I know you are here. I will take care of you." Now look beneath the anger. Is there hurt, fear, loneliness? Name it gently. Then place your hand on your heart and whisper, "May I be free from this suffering. May I find peace." Finally, extend this wish to the other person. May you be free from suffering. May you find peace. Notice the shift, however small. This is the beginning of transformation. Anger is powerful, but it need not rule us. With mindfulness, compassion, and patience, it can be transformed into strength, clarity, and love. The Buddha's path does not deny anger. It redeems it. In this redemption, relationships heal, communities heal, and even the world begins to heal. Asterisk. And as we step forward, we turn to another struggle of modern life, attachment. For even when anger cools, many hearts remain bound, clinging to possessions, people, and illusions of permanence. The next part of our journey will explore attachment and the freedom of letting go. We spend much of our lives holding on to people we love, holding on to possessions we value, holding on to identities we believe define us, holding on to dreams of how life should be. This clinging feels natural, even necessary. After all, doesn't love mean holding tight? Doesn't success mean never letting go? Yet, the Buddha taught that attachment, the desperate grasping to make impermanent things permanent, is one of the deepest roots of suffering. Like hands clutching water, the tighter we hold, the faster it slips away. Think about possessions. We live in a culture that glorifies accumulation. Bigger houses, faster cars, newer gadgets. At first, each purchase brings excitement, but soon the shine fades and the hunger returns. The cycle repeats, yet the satisfaction never lasts. Why? Because no possession can bring lasting happiness. Things break, get lost, or become outdated. When our sense of worth is tied to what we own, we suffer each time life takes something away. The Buddha warned that clinging to possessions is like building a home on shifting sand. No matter how grand it looks, it cannot stand forever. Attachment also appears in relationships. We love deeply, but too often we confuse love with possession. We want our partner to behave as we expect, our children to fulfill our dreams, our friends to never change. But people are not possessions. They are living, breathing beings with their own journeys, joys, and sorrows. When we cling too tightly, we strangle the very love we wish to protect. True love, the Buddha taught, is not rooted in control, but in freedom. To love wisely is to cherish without chaining, to support without suffocating, to walk beside another without trying to own their path. There is a story of a monk who owned a simple porcelain teacup. He cherished it, admired it, and treated it with great care. One day, another monk asked, "How do you feel about your teacup?" The first monk replied, "I know it is already broken." His words puzzled the listener, but the monk explained, "I enjoy the cup while I have it. I drink from it, admire it, share it with others. But I know it cannot last forever. One day it will chip, crack, or fall. When it does, I will not suffer because I accepted its impermanence." From the start, this story is not just about a teacup. It is about everything we hold dear. To remember impermanence is to love fully without clinging, to appreciate deeply without despair when change comes. Attachment also shows up in identity. We cling to roles: parent, worker, achiever, friend, as if they define our essence. When these roles shift or end, we feel lost. A parent whose children leave home, a worker who retires, a person whose reputation is damaged. Each feels a collapse of self because they clung to an identity as permanent. The Buddha taught anatta, or no self, not to erase individuality, but to remind us that no identity is fixed. We are more than our roles. We are awareness itself, vast and unchanging, within which roles come and go. To cling to identity is to shrink ourselves. To release it is to discover freedom. Letting go does not mean indifference. It does not mean rejecting love or possessions or identity. It means holding them lightly, knowing they are impermanent. It means enjoying the teacup while it lasts, loving the person while they are here, appreciating the role while it serves without demanding permanence. In this way, Letting go is not loss. It is liberation. It is the freedom to love more deeply, because love is no longer chained to fear of loss. Consider Maria, a mother who struggled when her only son left for college. She felt empty, restless, unsure of who she was without him at home. For months, she clung to the past, replaying memories, wishing he were still a child. Through mindfulness practice, she slowly learned to let go not of love, but of clinging. She began to see that her son's independence was not a loss, but a continuation of love in a new form. By releasing her attachment to the past, she found joy in the present. She supported her son's journey while also rediscovering her own. Letting go gave her freedom, and love remained. Practical steps can help us live this truth. Mindfulness of impermanence is one. Each day, notice small changes. A flower blooming and fading, the sky shifting, your own breath rising and falling. These remind us that everything is in flux. Instead of resisting change, we begin to embrace it. Another practice is gratitude. Each time we feel the urge to cling, we can pause and give thanks. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for this person. Thank you for this gift. Gratitude shifts us from fear of losing to appreciation of having. Finally, generosity weakens. Attachment. When we give freely time, resources, kindness, we loosen our grip on possessions and discover the joy of letting go. Science, once again, supports this wisdom. Studies show that those who practice gratitude and generosity report greater well-being and less attachment-related anxiety. Their happiness is less tied to external possessions and more rooted in inner freedom. This reflects the Buddha's insight that liberation comes not from clinging, but from releasing. Yet letting go is not always easy. The death of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the collapse of a dream, these bring real grief. The Buddha did not deny grief. He taught that we must honor it fully, allowing ourselves to weep, to mourn, to feel. But even in grief, impermanence can be a teacher. Love does not end with death. Connection does not vanish with loss. By letting go of clinging, we discover a love that transcends time, a connection that does not depend on possession. In this way, letting go deepens love instead of ending it. Attachment is tricky because it disguises itself as love, care, or responsibility. We say, I worry because I love you. I cling because you matter. I cannot let go because it shows my devotion. Yet true love is not control. True care is not possession. True devotion is not fear. The Buddha invited us to distinguish between attachment and love, between clinging and compassion. Attachment grasps and fears. Love frees and supports. When we confuse them, we suffer. When we separate them, we begin to live with clarity. Way to make this distinction is to examine our reactions to change. If love is accompanied by panic at the thought of losing, it is mixed with attachment. If care is accompanied by attempts to control, it is mixed with attachment. If devotion is accompanied by fear of abandonment, it is mixed with attachment. None of this makes us bad. It makes us human. But by seeing it clearly, we can begin to transform. The Buddha did not condemn attachment. He illuminated it so we could find freedom. Letting go is not rejection. It is release. A hand that holds too tightly strangles. A hand that holds gently nurtures. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you crush it in your palm, it dies. If you let it fly away, you may lose sight of it, but its beauty remains in your heart. Love is like this. To let go is not to stop loving. It is to love in freedom. The more we let go, the more love flows. The less we cling, the more peace arises. This is the paradox of letting go. We gain more than we lose. There is also a deeper level of attachment to our own thoughts and emotions. We cling to being right, to winning arguments, to defending our opinions as absolute truth. We cling to our sadness, replaying it endlessly. We cling to our anger, nurturing it like a fire. But thoughts and emotions, like everything else, are impermanent. When we cling, they harden into suffering. When we release, they flow and dissolve. The Buddha compared the mind to a river, always moving, never the same. To cling to one drop of water is futile. To watch the river flow is liberation. Consider Daniel, a man who clung fiercely to his reputation. Every criticism wounded him deeply. Every failure felt like the end of the world. Through meditation, he began to see that reputation is like a shadow, sometimes large, sometimes small, depending on the light. It is never stable, never fully within our control. By loosening his grip, he discovered peace. He still valued integrity, but he no longer lived in fear of every judgment. This freedom allowed him to act more authentically, without the constant need for approval. Daniel's story illustrates that letting go does not mean apathy. It means living from inner strength rather than external validation. The practice of letting go can also be applied to daily frustrations. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we can cling to anger all day, or we can release it in a moment. When plans fall apart, we can cling to disappointment, or we can breathe and adapt. Each small letting go strengthens the habit of release. Over time, it becomes natural. Life still changes. People still disappoint. Possessions still fade. But our suffering lessens because we no longer demand permanence from impermanent things. Forgiveness is another form of letting go. When we hold grudges, we chain ourselves to the past. When we forgive, we release not only the other, but ourselves. Forgiveness does not deny harm. It denies harm the power to control our hearts. It is one of the most liberating acts we can perform, a radical expression of letting go. The Buddha taught that forgiveness is not optional on the path to peace. It is essential. Without it, the heart remains heavy. With it, the heart becomes light. A useful meditation is this. Imagine holding a heavy stone. Your arm aches, but you refuse to drop it. The longer you cling, the greater the pain. Now, imagine setting it down. Instantly, relief floods your body. The stone was never part of you. You carried it, but you did not need to. This is attachment. The pain comes not from the stone itself, but from the refusal to release. The Buddha's invitation is simple. Put down the stone. Again and again. Each time we notice clinging, we can practice setting it down. Science supports this truth. Studies on resilience show that those who adapt best to loss, failure, or change are those who practice acceptance and letting go. They grieve, they feel, but they do not cling. They release what cannot be controlled and focus on what can. This mirrors the Buddha's teaching. Suffering is real, but much of it comes from resistance. Release the resistance, and freedom appears. Letting go also prepares us for the ultimate transition, death. The Buddha reminded his followers to contemplate mortality, not as morbid obsession, but as wisdom. Everything we cling to, our bodies, our possessions, our relationships, will eventually be released. Death is the great teacher of impermanence. Those who cling fight it with terror. Those who practice letting go meet it with peace. By practicing release daily, we prepare for the final letting go. Death then becomes not the enemy, but the doorway to freedom. This teaching is not about despair. It is about living more fully. When we stop clinging, we stop fearing. When we stop fearing, we begin to live with joy. Every moment becomes precious because we know it cannot last. Every person becomes beloved because we know they will not always be here. Every breath becomes sacred because it is fleeting. Letting go does not diminish life. It intensifies it. Let us close with a meditation of release. Sit comfortably. Bring to mind something you are clinging to, a person, a possession, a fear. Notice how your body feels as you hold it tightly. Now, imagine gently opening your hand, releasing it into the air. Say silently, I release you. I allow you to be free. I allow myself to be free. Feel the lightness that arises. This is the practice of letting go. This is the path to freedom. Attachment is natural, but it need not rule us. With mindfulness, gratitude, generosity, and compassion, we can learn to loosen our grip. We can discover the joy of release, the peace of freedom, the love that flows without chains. This is the gift of letting go. Not less love, but more. Not emptiness, but fullness. Not loss, but liberation. And as we move forward, we encounter another struggle of modern life: fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. Fear is the shadow behind much of our clinging. To face fear is to face one of the deepest roots of suffering. This is the valley we will enter next. Fear is one of the oldest companions of humanity. It kept our ancestors alive when wild animals prowled the forests. It sharpened their senses, quickened their reactions, and ensured survival. But in the modern world, fear has taken on new forms. It is no longer lions at the edge of the village. It is the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of the unknown. It is the restless dread of illness, aging, and death. Fear shapes decisions, limits potential, and steals peace. Left unchecked, it rules our lives like a hidden tyrant. Consider how fear shapes daily life. A young artist hesitates to share her work, fearing criticism. A man stays in a job he hates, fearing instability. A woman avoids love, fearing heartbreak. Each decision, though seemingly safe, becomes a cage. Fear whispers, stay small, do not risk, do not trust. And so, dreams fade, relationships weaken, and joy is diminished. Fear convinces us it is protecting us, but in truth, it imprisons. U.S. The Buddha compared fear to chains, binding the mind and heart. Freedom comes not by denying fear, but by learning to face it with wisdom. At its root, fear is a reaction to impermanence. We fear losing what we love. We fear not getting what we want. We fear the uncertainty of tomorrow. The Buddha saw this clearly. He taught that fear arises when we cling to permanence in a world that is always changing. If we expect stability, where none exists, we will always live in fear. The path to freedom is not to eliminate change, but to accept it, to see impermanence not as a threat, but as the very fabric of life. When we accept that change is inevitable, fear begins to soften. We no longer demand guarantees. We learn to live with trust. There is a story of a traveler who encountered a raging river. He needed to cross, but the water was wild, the current fierce. At first, he froze, paralyzed by fear. Then he began to gather branches, tying them together, to build a raft. With patience and effort, he crossed safely. When he reached the far shore, he did not carry the raft on his back. He set it down and continued on his way. This story is often told to illustrate letting go, but it also speaks to fear. The traveler did not deny the river's danger. He acknowledged it, then acted wisely. Fear was present, but it did not rule him. This is the path of courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Courage in Buddhism is not reckless bravado. It is grounded trust, trust in our ability to meet challenges, trust in the impermanence of fear itself, trust in the strength of compassion and wisdom. Fear says, "You cannot handle this." Courage replies, "I will face it one breath at a time." This is not blind optimism. It is clear-eyed faith in the resilience of the human spirit. The Buddha himself faced fear in the deepest sense. Sitting under the Bodhi tree, Mara confronted him with terrifying visions: storms, demons, armies. But the Buddha remained calm, touching the earth as witness. His stillness transformed fear into awakening. His story teaches us that fear can be met with presence, not panic. Let us look more closely at the fears that shape modern life. There is fear of failure. In a culture obsessed with success, many feel paralyzed at the thought of falling short. They avoid risks, silence creativity, or overwork themselves to exhaustion. Yet the Buddha taught that failure is not the end. It is a teacher. Every mistake reveals impermanence, humility, and growth. To fear failure is to fear learning. When we embrace it as part of the path, fear loses its hold. There is fear of rejection. We long to belong, to be loved, to be accepted. When rejection comes, it cuts deep. Fear of this pain keeps many from opening their hearts. But the Buddha taught that love is not about possession or approval. It is about compassion, freely given. When we rest in compassion, rejection may still hurt, but it does not define us. Our worth is not tied to the shifting opinions of others. Fear dissolves when we anchor in self-compassion. There is fear of the unknown. The future is uncertain, and uncertainty is unsettling. We imagine disasters, illnesses, losses. Anxiety grows. Yet uncertainty is also possibility. The unknown is not only danger, it is also opportunity. The Buddha encouraged trust in the present moment. The future cannot be controlled, but the present can be lived fully. When we return to now, fear of the unknown begins to lose its grip. There is the greatest fear of all: death. Every culture has grappled with it. Every person feels its shadow. Death is the ultimate unknown, the ultimate loss of control. Many avoid thinking of it, yet it shapes choices subconsciously. The Buddha did not avoid death. He taught his disciples to contemplate it daily. Of all footprints, the elephant's is supreme. Of all meditations, mindfulness of death is supreme. This was not to frighten, but to liberate. When we accept death as part of life, fear begins to transform. We see that every moment is precious because it is fleeting. We live more fully because we no longer deny mortality. Fear may seem overwhelming, but it is not permanent. Like all emotions, it arises, peaks, and passes. The practice is to sit with fear, breathe with it, and watch its flow. Imagine fear as a storm. At first, the winds howl, the sky darkens. But if you wait, if you stay grounded, the storm passes. The sky clears, the sun returns. Fear is like this. It is powerful, but it cannot last forever. To remember this truth is to find courage. Let us practice. Bring to mind a fear you carry, perhaps of failure, rejection, illness, or loss. Notice how it feels in your body, the tightness, the heat, the trembling. Breathe into that space. Say silently, I see you. Fear, I know you are here. I will take care of you. Imagine holding your fear as you would a frightened child. Gently, patiently, with compassion. Notice how the fear shifts when it is met with kindness instead of judgment. This is the heart of courage, not to destroy fear, but to embrace it with love. Fear can feel like a wall, solid and immovable. But when we look closely, we see that it is made of thoughts, images, and stories. Fear says, you cannot handle this. Fear says, disaster is certain. Fear says, you are alone. Yet none of these are absolute truths. They are clouds passing through the sky of the mind. The Buddha taught that when we shine the light of mindfulness on fear, we see its true nature. It is empty of permanence. Like a shadow, fear appears large when the light is dim, but when light grows stronger, the shadow shrinks. In this way, awareness itself becomes the medicine for fear. One of the most powerful antidotes to fear is trust. Trust is not blind belief that nothing bad will happen. Trust is the deep confidence that whatever happens, we can meet it. Trust says, I may fall, but I can rise again. I may lose, but I can love again. I may suffer, but I can find meaning again. This kind of trust is rooted in the practice of mindfulness. Each time we face a small fear speaking honestly, trying something new, sitting with discomfort, we strengthen our capacity. Over time, this trust grows until even the great fears, illness, aging, death are met with steadiness. There is a story of the Buddha walking through a forest. A group of bandits blocked his path, threatening to kill him. The Buddha did not run. He did not fight. He stood calmly, radiating compassion. The bandits, unsettled by his fearlessness, eventually lowered their weapons. The story may be legendary, but its truth is clear. Fearlessness is not about dominating others. It is about embodying such peace that even fear itself begins to dissolve. This is the power of inner trust. In modern life, we may not face bandits, but we face daily fears of speaking our truth, of disappointing others, of stepping into the unknown. Each of these moments is an invitation to courage, to speak gently but firmly when silence would be easier, to try something new even when failure is possible, to love again after heartbreak. Each small act of courage chips away at the wall of fear. Slowly, the wall crumbles and freedom expands. Fear also loses power when we remember interbeing. Alone, we feel fragile. Together, we feel strong. When we share our fears with others, we discover that we are not alone. Countless people carry the same worries, the same doubts. Connection turns fear into solidarity. This is why community is essential. In the Sangha, a spiritual community, we borrow one another's courage. When our own flame flickers, others' flames help keep it alive. Fear thrives in isolation. It weakens in connection. Another practice is visualization. The Buddha encouraged meditations on loving kindness, not only for others, but for ourselves. When fear arises, imagine yourself surrounded by light, safe and protected. Imagine each breath filling you with courage. Imagine each exhale releasing fear. Over time, this trains the nervous system to respond with calm instead of panic. Science confirms this. Visualization and mindfulness reduce fear responses in the brain, building resilience and trust. Perhaps the deepest transformation comes when we face the ultimate fear, death. Death strips away all illusions of permanence. It confronts us with the unknown. Many recoil from it, avoiding the thought, living in quiet dread. But the Buddha invited his disciples to contemplate death daily, not to frighten, but to awaken. To remember that life is fleeting makes each moment precious. To remember that we will die reminds us to live fully. When we accept death, fear loses its sharpest edge. We see that we are part of a vast cycle, that birth and death are not enemies, but partners. Fear dissolves into reverence for life itself. Consider Sarah, a woman diagnosed with terminal illness. At first, fear consumed her fear of pain, of leaving her family, of the unknown. But through meditation and support, she began to accept impermanence. She spent her final months not in dread, but in presence, savoring meals, cherishing conversations, watching sunsets. She told her loved ones, "I am not losing life. I am entering its deepest truth." Her story reminds us that fear of death can be transformed into love of life. This is not denial. It is awakening. God, let us practice together. Bring to mind a fear you carry. Breathe deeply. Say silently, "I see you, fear. I will not run. I will not fight. I will sit with you." Place your hand on your heart. Imagine courage as a warm flame within you. With each breath, the flame grows brighter. With each exhale, fear softens. Whisper, I trust myself. I trust life. I trust this moment. Feel the shift, however small. This is the seed of fearlessness. The path of the Buddha does not promise a life without fear. It promises a new relationship to fear. Instead of chains, fear becomes a teacher. Instead of a wall, it becomes a doorway. Instead of a tyrant, it becomes a guide. Fear points us toward what matters. It shows us where we are still clinging, where we are still vulnerable, where we are still alive. When we meet it with mindfulness, compassion, and trust, fear transforms into courage. And courage leads us deeper into freedom. As we come to the close of this section, we see that fear, like all forms of suffering, is not separate from the path. It is part of it. To live without fear is not possible. To live with courage, despite fear, is liberation. And so, as we step forward, we arrive at the final part of our journey, hope. After stress, anxiety, despair, anger, attachment, and fear, what remains is the possibility of renewal. The closing chapter will gather all these lessons, reminding us that suffering is not the end of the story. The end is hope, the hope born of compassion, mindfulness, and awakening. After walking through valleys of stress, anxiety, despair, anger, attachment, and fear, it is natural to wonder, is there light beyond the darkness? The Buddha's answer was clear: yes. Always yes. The very heart of his teaching is hope, not shallow optimism that denies suffering, but deep hope born from understanding suffering. He called it the possibility of awakening, the promise that no matter how heavy the burdens we carry, freedom is possible. Hope is not an escape from pain. It is the light that shines through pain. Hope in the Buddhist path is different from wishful thinking. Wishful thinking says, maybe things will magically get better. True hope says, things can change because everything is impermanent. Suffering can end because causes can be transformed. Peace is possible because it already exists within. This kind of hope is steady, grounded, unshakable. It does not depend on circumstances. It depends on wisdom and compassion. Consider Michael, a man who battled addiction for years. He relapsed many times, often convinced he would never be free. But each time he fell, he remembered one truth: impermanence. He told himself, if pain can change, so can I. Slowly, with practice, support, and compassion, he built a new life. He still faced struggles, but he lived with hope. Michael's story illustrates that hope is not the absence of setbacks. It is the refusal to give up. It is the steady belief that healing is possible even when progress is slow. The Buddha's teaching of the Four Noble Truths is itself a message of hope. The first truth: suffering exists. The second: suffering has causes. The third: suffering can end. The fourth: there is a path that leads to the end of suffering. Notice how hope is woven into this structure. If suffering has a cause, then it can be addressed. If suffering has an end, then freedom is real. The path is not reserved for saints or sages. It is for anyone willing to walk it. This universality is the foundation of hope. No matter who you are, awakening is possible. Hope also appears in small daily acts. A single breath taken mindfully, a kind word offered to a stranger, a moment of gratitude before sleep. Each of these plants seeds of awakening. Alone, they may seem small, but over time, they grow into forests of peace. Hope is not only in grand transformations. It is in the simple acts of choosing love over hate, patience over anger, presence over distraction. Each choice matters. Each moment is an opportunity. This is the hope of daily practice. There is a story of a farmer whose field was flooded, destroying his crops. In despair, He went to the Buddha, saying, "How can I live with so much loss?" The Buddha replied, "Everyone has 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. You cannot have one without the other, but you can learn to smile at both." This teaching does not deny suffering. It embraces it, showing that joy and sorrow are inseparable. Hope arises not from escaping sorrow, but from learning to hold it with wisdom. When we see that life is both joy and sorrow, we no longer despair. We live with balanced. Hope also means trust in the power of compassion. When we practice compassion for ourselves and others, we discover that suffering can soften. A harsh inner critic can become a gentle voice. A broken relationship can heal. A divided community can find common ground. Compassion is the soil in which hope grows. Without compassion, hope withers into denial or arrogance. With compassion, hope becomes resilient, enduring even in hardship. Science echoes this truth. Studies show that people who practice compassion and mindfulness report higher levels of hope, resilience, and life satisfaction. Their hope is not naive. It is grounded in awareness. They know suffering is real, but they also know they are not powerless. This mirrors the Buddhist message. Suffering is real, but so is freedom. Hope is the bridge between the two. Let us practice together. Sit quietly. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe gently. Say silently, "I am alive. I am breathing." This moment is new. With each breath, imagine planting seeds of peace. See them grow into flowers of hope. Whisper to yourself, "No matter the pain, renewal is possible. No matter the loss, love remains. No matter the fear, courage can grow." Feel the warmth in your chest. This is hope, not distant, not abstract, but alive within you now. Hope also connects us to community. Alone, despair feels overwhelming. Together, hope multiplies. When we see others walking the path, we are reminded that healing is possible. When we hear stories of transformation, we are inspired. When we share our struggles honestly, we create spaces where hope can flourish. The Buddha emphasized Sangha for this reason. Hope is not only personal, it is collective. Together, we lift one another. Together, we remind each other of what is possible. In this way, hope is not passive. It is active. It calls us to keep practicing, to keep showing up, to keep loving. It does not say, "One day I will be free." It says, "This step is freedom. This breath is peace. This act is awakening." Hope transforms every moment into an opportunity to live with compassion and awareness. It is both the destination and the path itself. Hope is not fragile. True hope is strong, steady, and unshakable because it is rooted in wisdom. It does not depend on circumstances being perfect. It does not vanish when setbacks come. It is grounded in the understanding of impermanence, compassion, and interbeing. When we see that all things change, we realize that suffering too can change. When we see that all beings are connected, we realize that we are never alone. When we practice compassion, we realize that love can transform even the darkest moments. This is the kind of hope the Buddha offered. Hope that does not deny suffering, but transcends it. Consider Emily, a teacher working in a struggling community. Every day she faced challenges, lack of resources, students carrying heavy burdens, a system that seemed broken. At times, despair threatened to overwhelm her, but she found hope in the small things, the smile of a child who finally understood a lesson, the gratitude of a parent, the laughter in the classroom. These moments reminded her why she taught. They were seeds of renewal, proof that even in difficulty, goodness could bloom. Emily's story shows that hope is not found in escaping challenges, but in finding meaning within them. Hope also requires patience. In a culture that demands instant results, patience feels old-fashioned. Yet true transformation takes time. A seed does not become a tree overnight. Healing does not happen in a day. Awakening unfolds step by step, breath by breath. The Buddha compared the path to polishing a mirror. At first, it is clouded, but with each gentle stroke, clarity appears. In the same way, hope grows as we continue practicing, even when results seem invisible. Patience keeps hope alive when progress is slow. There is another dimension to hope: joy. Many think joy and hope are separate, but in truth, they are partners. Hope says, peace is possible. Joy says, peace is already here. The Buddha encouraged mindfulness of joy, not as a denial of suffering, but as nourishment. To notice the taste of tea, the sound of birds, the touch of a breeze, these are acts of hope. They remind us that life, even in struggle, holds beauty. Joy is not a luxury. It is fuel for the journey. Without joy, hope becomes dry. With joy, hope becomes vibrant. Let us return to the Four Noble Truths. They begin with suffering, but they do not end there. They lead to liberation. This structure itself is a teaching of hope. Life begins with pain, but it does not remain there. With awareness, compassion, and practice, it can lead to freedom. This freedom is not distant or abstract. It is here, in each mindful step, each compassionate word, each act of letting go. Hope is not about someday. It is about now. A final story. Once a group of monks asked the Buddha, "What is the essence of your teaching?" He replied, "I teach suffering and the end of suffering." In these simple words lies the greatest hope. We suffer, but suffering can end. We fall, but we can rise. We hurt, but we can heal. We despair, but we can awaken. Hope is not a fantasy. It is the truth of impermanence, the reality of transformation, the promise of awakening. This is the gift the Buddha offered to all beings. Let us close with a meditation of hope. Sit comfortably. Breathe deeply. Imagine a light in your heart, warm and steady. With each breath, it grows brighter. Whisper silently, "May I live with hope. May I live with peace. May I live with love." Now extend this wish outward. May my family live with hope. May my community live with peace. May all beings live with love. See the light expanding, touching the world, connecting every being. This is not imagination. This is reality. Hope is not limited to one heart. It flows endlessly, joining us. All as we come to the end of this journey, remember, the valleys of stress, anxiety, despair, anger, attachment, and fear are real, but they are not the end of the story. The end is hope. The end is awakening. The end is freedom. The Buddha's path is not about escaping life, but about embracing it fully, with clarity, compassion, and trust. This path is available to you right now. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to take one step, one breath, one moment of awareness. Each step is hope. Each breath is freedom. Each moment is awakening. This is the promise of the path. No matter the suffering, renewal is possible. No matter the darkness, light can return. No matter the past, freedom is here. Hope is not distant. Hope is now.